Konoha East Uchiha is very cautious. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 151 Investigation. Being carried on someone's back. While chatting with the other party, Toshiro did not relax too much. Although he successfully deceived Meixiang, he could not relax until he was truly safe. If he was not careful, he would be in trouble. Excuse me, is my companion okay? In the temporary camp opened up by the sand ninja, the chunin who was carrying Toshiro was asking a medical ninja at this time. Nothing serious, he was just hit by an illusion and could not control his own actions for a while. He will return to normal after one night. Really? Thank you so much. I'm really sorry to bother you again, Aida. While saying this, Toshiro's temporary teammate bowed to the other party to express his apology. You are too polite, and Toshiro, who was lying on the side, breathed a sigh of relief. He finally succeeded in mixing with the other party. Finally, his plan was not in vain. Being chased by these sand ninjas for a whole day, he was really exhausted. If he couldn't find a place to rest successfully, he probably wouldn't last long. Even if he had successfully cultivated the immortal technique, time was limited after all. Although the improvement he could bring was considerable, it couldn't withstand his consumption for a whole day. As a last resort, he had to take the risk and try it. But the result was worthy of his plan. After deceiving Meixiang, it was not difficult for him to deceive these medical ninjas. He himself knew medical ninjutsu and knew the injuries he wanted to disguise. He just used some tricks when confirming his identity, and there were no other accidents. Not only did he have a relatively comfortable resting environment, but he also had people to take care of him. This is really the reason why he stayed here and didn't run away all the time, was that his own consumption was a matter of time. And there was another important reason. Compared to breaking through the siege and returning to the Konoha camp, after repeated consideration, Meixiang decided to find a breakthrough from the air. When the sun rises tomorrow, he can summon the mountain eagle again. By that time, even if the sand ninjas block the ground tightly, it will be useless. If you just want to summon the other party, you need a certain amount of chakra. If you continue to play hide and seek with the sand ninjas, he has no confidence that he will have enough chakra by then. Lying in the temporary camp prepared by the sand ninjas, Meixiang never thought that he would live in a tent with the sand ninjas who were injured by him and receive treatment at the same time. At that time, in order to form a certain deterrent to the sand ninjas and make them have some scruples when chasing, he had to spend a lot of energy. He killed a group of middle and lower ninjas. At this time, he became his fellow patient. This is really the unpredictable life. After dealing with his fellow patients for a few words, in order to reduce the risk of exposure, Meixiang shut up and took a nap. In the next period of time, he had to conserve his energy. Time passed slowly. It's almost the whole night, and there's still no trace of the enemy. We lost the enemy since the second half of the night. Damn, the enemy must be hiding somewhere. Where is the sensor ninja? The sensor ninja didn't find anything either. Could the enemy have escaped the encirclement? That's impossible. There are a large number of ninjas deployed outside. It's impossible for the enemy to pass through our defense line silently. Although the enemy is not very old, his chakra reserves are very abundant. Every time we find something, we catch a shadow clone. We can't go on like this. At this time, a group of sand ninjas were sitting in a circle, discussing this action. Just a quick count showed that there were as many as 7 or 8 people, plus the subordinates led by each of them. Fortunately, although they were not few in number, facing the vast borderline, for a while, it was also difficult to find the exact trace of Toshiro. The reason why Toshiro was not completely lost until the second half of the night was because he had ambushed a shadow clone in advance, and from time to time he would make some noise to attract the attention of the sand ninjas. In order to cover up the main body, those shadow clones took away all the detonating tags, shuriken and other consumables from Meixiang. Every time they were discovered, there would always be a loud noise, attracting their attention. This made these sand ninjas even more exhausted. Will the other party take the opportunity to mix into our team? It should be said that there are smart people in the Sand Ninja village. Soon someone thought of this possibility and raised it. It is unlikely, you know. We are all Jonin. If it is just a simple transformation technique, it is impossible to deceive our eyes and mix into our team. A Jonin quickly refuted the person who raised the question. This is also a fact. If it is an ordinary middle and lower ninja, it would be fine if they were deceived by some transformation techniques. But they are Jonin. We can't completely deny this possibility. You know, the other party is an Uchiha, and his illusion techniques are quite sophisticated and cannot be underestimated. At this time, Meixiang, who had been silent since the beginning of the discussion, suddenly spoke. She also felt that with the cunningness of the other party, it is very likely that he would mix into the Sand Ninja team, otherwise, they would not have been able to find anything for so long. After Meixiang spoke, the place fell silent for a while. They knew the great name of the Uchiha, although the opponent was not very old. His Sharingan was indeed well developed. The few of them who had faced the shadow clones also had a deep understanding of his ability in illusion. Otherwise, we will divide the people into two groups. One group will continue to search for the opponent's traces, and the other group will start screening and investigating from our own people. It didn't take long for someone to propose this compromise plan. And as soon as the plan was proposed, it was approved by almost all the Jonin in the place. Agree. Seeing that the plan was approved by everyone, the leaders began to allocate people. The Jonin who first raised the objection, Meixiang, and another Jonin puppeteer formed a special investigation team of 3. They specifically targeted the Sand Ninja himself to see if the opponent had mixed in with their own people. Everyone, gather your subordinates first and start with them. Then slowly expand to the periphery once a decision is made. These Sand Ninjas act very quickly. Chapter 152 Hidden. In the medical tent of the Sand Ninja, Toshiro was lying, not asleep. He was not out of danger yet, and he remained alert the whole night. It's almost time. He silently felt the time, and now there was not much time left before dawn. It was almost time to prepare to leave this place where he had stayed all night. This is as soon as he opened his eyes and was about to take action, Toshiro felt that several people were walking towards the tent. Has it been exposed? Toshiro was not too surprised that the other party would find something wrong, although he acted very cleanly when he acted on the original owner of his current identity. It was inevitable that the other party would have some suspicion after such a long time. It's just that this time point is a little. Before Toshiro could prepare, the curtain of the tent was opened. A group of 4 or 5 ninjas walked in together. Master Meixiang, these are the wounded we have admitted. They have all been strictly checked and there is nothing wrong with them. The medical ninja who led the 3 senior ninjas and introduced the situation here while speaking. This tent was built temporarily and was a little narrow. There were only 3 wounded in the tent recuperating here. This one has a broken hand. This one is. He introduced the wounded one by one, and introduced the basic information of these wounded to the 3 senior ninjas. At this time, the 3 wounded who heard the noise woke up one by one, and looked up at the adults who suddenly arrived. For a moment, they were a little confused about what they were doing here at this time. Could it be that they came to visit the wounded? There is no such tradition in the Sand Village. Meixiang just looked at these people and didn't find anything unusual. He also unexpectedly saw a figure that he had some impression of. If I remember correctly, I should have seen him this evening. Let me do it this time. At this time, the puppeteer who followed Meixiang spoke. They all took turns to conduct detailed examinations, and this time it was his turn. Without expressing any opinions, the 3 Jonins who came in did not give up the examination because of the medical ninja's one-sided words. Seeing the other party squatting down beside the bed next to him, he said a few words to the injured Sand Ninja, and then first put his hand on the other party's body to feel it. Then he moved his palm to the face of the injured and touched it. After not finding anything abnormal, he was unwilling to give up, and then asked the other party some things that only he knew. Fool, this is completely leaving no way out. Dong Shilang, who had been watching, knew that according to the other party's examination method, he could not hide no matter what, not to mention that he only used some small tricks such as disguise. Even if he used the high-level ninjutsu of eliminating face technique, he would be exposed in the end. Swish! A whimpering sound of a kunai piercing the air came. Little before he could even say a word, the kunai in Tawashiru's hand had already approached the puppeteer's neck. As long as he pushed forward, the opponent's carotid artery would be cut open. Feeling that he couldn't hide, Tawashiru didn't wait for the opponent to check him before taking action. Instead, he took advantage of the opponent's sideways check on another sand ninja and launched a surprise attack. This action stunned the two sand ninjas in the same tent and the medical ninja. They really didn't expect that their patients and the wounded recuperating in the same tent would launch a surprise attack at this time. Only as a fellow puppeteer, he still maintained a certain calmness at this time, but he was also a little surprised at this time. Not good. The kunai pierced the opponent's neck, but Tawashiru didn't have time to be happy. His face suddenly changed. The feeling was wrong. It should be the puppet. Before he had time to make adjustments, swish, 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 the shuriken of the rain squad greeted Tawashiru's vital points. The whizzing sound caused by the high speed cutting through the air. Just by listening to it, you can tell how amazing the power that the owner of these shurikens and kunai has poured into them is. It's that Uchiha. Irrelevant personnel, disperse. It took a whole day to finally catch the other party. At this time, although Meixiang was excited, he did not lose his composure, and kindly reminded the several sand ninjas in the tent. But her companions were not as kind as her, and had already started to make hand seals. The life and death of these chunin was simply not worth mentioning compared to this Uchiha. He would not have any mercy. At this time, Dong Shilang found that the hand feeling was not right and that he had not stabbed a real person. He did not hesitate at all, and made hand seals with one hand while blocking these shurikens with the other hand. Ding, ding, ding. The sound of the shurikens falling to the ground was loud. Fire style, dust hiding technique. At this time, facing a bloody ninja, a jonin puppeteer, and a jonin whose background was unknown, staying here would be courting death. Without any hesitation, Dong Shilang launched the ninjutsu. At the same time, he threw the kunai in his hand towards the position of the jonin in his perception. He did not miss any of this dust-hiding technique, as well as several other fire escape ninjutsu that were magnificent in the original book, and mastered them all. It's just that the power is very different from that of the characters in the original book. But even so, the power should not be underestimated. Cough, cough, cough. The successful performance of this ninjutsu choked several people in the tent. At the same time, it also obscured their vision. The other party wants to escape. The first to react was Meixiang, a blood ninja. When the smoke just dispersed, he discovered the other party's intention, but he was concerned about his companions and was a little difficult to do for a while. At this time, there were not only enemies in the tent, but also two wounded people and a medical ninja with little combat power. From this, it can be seen that she and the jonin who was about to perform ninjutsu next to her were two different people. But as a Konoha ninja, Tawashiru didn't have so many concerns. Bang! As the seal in his hand changed, the ninjutsu he had just performed, which was a ball of burning black dust, changed and began to burn. This ninjutsu not only covered the retreat of the caster, but also had a certain degree of offensiveness. It could burn under the control of the caster, causing certain damage to the pursuing enemy. However, the damage was limited. Chapter 153 Flirting. At the end of the earth, on the east side of the horizon, a trace of white like a fish belly was about to appear, making the whole earth fall into a gray haze. At this time, in a sand ninja camp located at the border of the land of fire and the land of rivers. At this time, a figure rushed out of the tent that was about to collapse and headed towards the eastern sky. This figure was Uchiha Tawashiru, who had just been discovered. After performing the dust-hiding technique, he rushed out of the tent and tried to break out. Get back! At this moment, a male voice mixed with excitement and indifference suddenly sounded. Looking in the direction of the voice, it was the puppeteer wearing the traditional sand ninja combat uniform. The head was wrapped in a white bandage and the face was painted with oil paint. Just from the cold murderous aura emanating from the other party, it can be judged that the other party's strength should not be underestimated. Woo, woo, woo. Before Tawashiru could continue to observe the other party, a sound of an object cutting through the air at high speed attacked him. It's a scorpion's tail. With the excellent insight of the Sharingan, Dong Shilang saw through the true form of the attacking object. It was a scorpion tail shaped like a steel whip with a sharp blade at the end. The root of this scorpion tail was connected to a scorpion puppet that was as big as a car in the previous life. In the side of the Sharingan, there were several very thin blue chakra lines connected to the puppet, controlling its every move. It turned out that this puppeteer, after discovering that something was wrong, did not rush into the tent to catch people, but ambushed outside. At this critical moment, he gave Dong Shilang this surprise. It was indeed a surprise. At this time, he was in the air 2 or 3 meters above the ground, unable to use the force to dodge, and he didn't have anything handy in his hands. The kunai just now was the last weapon he had. Snap! With a light sound, Dong Shilang flew to the back of the tent at a faster speed than when he came. Just now, facing this sudden attack, looking at the cold and gleaming blade at the root of the scorpion's tail, Dong Shilang, who had no weapons in his hands, suddenly had an idea, and with a snap, he clamped the blade with his shoes. Although he avoided this fatal blow, the impact force carried by the scorpion's tail was something he could not offset, so he could only unload the force in the direction of the attack. He returned to the smoke again. As the smoke dissipated, the scene inside slowly revealed itself to everyone. A large group of 20 or 30 sand ninjas surrounded Dong Shilang in a desperate situation in a fan-shaped manner. It was called a desperate situation because when the sand ninjas established this medical point, they chose the strategy of leaning against the cliff to protect the safety of the camp and reduce the risks they faced. But this was a hard time for Dong Shilang, who had his back against a cliff of 100 feet. In front of him were the sand ninjas with varying strengths but a large number of people. It was not that he had no way to climb the cliff, but once he did so, his back would be exposed to the eyes of these ninjas. At this time, all the sand ninjas in the entire medical station were alarmed, except for a few medical personnel. All the people, whether they were injured or not, joined in the siege of Toshiro. This is really looking at the situation in front of him. Even a man as brave as him couldn't help but lament his luck at this time, and his eyes kept twitching. "Boy, I advise you to surrender quickly, otherwise." At this time, the Jonin who was just in the tent and was about to launch a ninjutsu attack without caring about his companion spoke. As soon as he opened his mouth, he asked Toshiro to surrender. But it should be said that Toshiro at this time was basically unable to escape, because while the other party was talking to him, another ninja fired several flares into the air. Needless to say, it won't take long before this place will be surrounded by sand ninjas who heard the news. By that time, it is estimated that it will be difficult for him to surrender. Oh, don't put up any resistance. Surrender? I just wonder if there will be any preferential treatment if this happens. Seeing someone on the other side speak up, Dong Shilang did not rush to take action, but chatted with the other party in a nonchalant manner. "Humphrey, at this time, you still want to negotiate with us? It's just wishful thinking." "Well, don't say that. With my conditions, I think I can still enjoy certain treatment." Seeing that the other party showed signs of loosening up, these sand ninjas were not in a hurry for a while. After all, the longer the time dragged on, the better for them. It's just that the other party was still in the mood to make such a joke at this time. Fantasy, daydreaming, dot. Seeing these sand ninjas on the opposite side were so cute, Dong Shilang couldn't help but want to tease them and said with a smile, "Don't say that. If I were a high-ranking official in your village, and I finally caught a talent like me, I would definitely pair him with 8 or 10 beauties. In less than 20 or 30 years, wouldn't another bloodstained family be born in your sand village? For example, this scorch release user opposite. If the two of us combine, then a double bloodstained ninja with Sharingan and scorch release will be born. Think about it. Won't the future of your sand village be guaranteed?" Asshole. Shameless. Shameless. If the two sides could still communicate peacefully at the beginning. By this time, the sand ninjas had become very excited. Everyone wanted to draw their swords and rush forward to cut Toshiro into pieces. "Who is Scorch Release Meixiang? She is a famous beauty in their sand village. How could she let a captive like you get away with it?" Unlike those angry middle and lower ninjas, the older sand ninjas, after hearing this, their eyes flickered, and I don't know what they were thinking. At this time, Meixiang, as the person involved, clenched her fists and gritted her teeth. She was very angry at the despicable Uchiha on the opposite side. He dared to tease her in front of so many people. Damn it, she didn't care about delaying time or anything. She formed seals with both hands and prepared to use her blood limit to kill the damn guy on the opposite side with one move. Fire escape, great fire extinguishment. But before she could launch the ninjutsu, the bastard on the opposite side had already attacked one step ahead. And the first move was a very powerful fire escape ninjutsu. At this time, Dong Xilang jumped back to distance himself, crossed his hands, overlapped his 10 fingers, and his entire chest bulged high. A thin flame grew larger and larger as the distance increased, and finally formed a sea of fire. Chapter 154. Strong. The fingers of both hands intertwined, the index fingers pressed together, and the chest bulged high. Fire style. Fire extinguishing as Tawashiro's cheeks swelled, he exhaled. A ball of concentrated chakra that was invisible to the naked eye passed through the 2 index fingers pressed together, turning into a thin line of fire, and rushed towards the sand ninja on the opposite side. After passing through Tawashiro's 2 index fingers pressed together, the thin line of fire quickly began to expand and became bigger. After only rushing out 10 meters, it turned into a sea of fire that enveloped the entire scene, covering the entire group of sand ninjas within the range of the fire. Although it was obviously not as good as Madara in the original work, and ninjutsu pulled a whole group of ninja coalition forces into the range of the sea of fire, but the power of Tawashiro's fire style was also quite amazing. In front of him, the fan-shaped area of nearly 100 meters was submerged by the orange-red fire waves like a surging tide. It's over, we're dead this time. Damn it, is the gap so big? Faced with Tawashiro's powerful and wide-ranging fire ninjutsu, most of the sand ninjas on the opposite side were scared out of their wits. For a moment, they didn't know how to resist. Some of the sand ninjas even thought they were not far from death. With such a large attack range, it was obviously impossible to escape from the sea of fire in a short time. As for using wind ninjutsu to resist, what a joke. Are you thinking you're not dying fast enough? Even the few jonins in the field, seeing such a scene, were sweating profusely on their faces and veins on their foreheads. Even if they were jonins, facing such a powerful fire ninjutsu, if they didn't handle it well, they would die. Everyone defend with water ninjutsu. Use all the defensive means. Fortunately, at every critical moment, there is always someone who can turn the tide. With Meixiang's roar, these confused sand ninjas were called back to reality. In order to deal with Konoha's fire ninjutsu, some of the sand ninjas also chose to learn water as their second attribute, especially the few sand ninja jounins in the field. And those chunins and the like also have 1 or 2 ways to defend against fire ninjutsu. Water ninjutsu middle. Water wall formation. Water ninjutsu middle. Water rush wave. Water ninjutsu middle. Water bullet technique. Earth ninjutsu middle. Earth flow wall, and so on. All kinds of ninjutsu were used by these sand ninjas who came to their senses to resist Dong Xilang's attack. At this time, they didn't care whether the ninjutsu they used was appropriate. All the ninjutsu that felt effective was performed by these sand ninjas. For example, Meixiang, she was born with wind and fire, and her attributes were friendly. Although she was a jounin, she completely gave up practicing other attributes in order to synthesize the burning ninjutsu. At this critical juncture, she could only perform a large-scale fire ninjutsu, hoping that this could offset the power of the opponent's ninjutsu. As for the fact that there was no water source here and it was impossible to perform water ninjutsu, this situation did not exist at all. With the magical supernatural energy of chakra, as long as you are willing to spend more chakra when casting a spell, there is no water-style ninjutsu that cannot be cast. And now is the time for these sand ninjas to fight desperately, and they have no choice but to fight to the death in the center of the battlefield. The flames, water, and soil cast by the ninjas of both sides gathered together and collided with each other and cancelled each other out. Boom! A deafening roar erupted from the place where these chakras gathered. Then a large piece of white smoke spread out, covering the entire battlefield. Seeing that the visibility at the scene dropped significantly, relying on his Sharingan and excellent perception ability, Dong Shilang rushed directly into the white mist without any hesitation. Bang, ka, bang. As Dong Shilang attacked, from time to time in the white water vapor, there were sand ninjas whose positions he sensed, or whose whereabouts were seen through by the Sharingan, and he found them. Ah! The screams of the sand ninjas were heard from time to time. Some of them were blown away because they could not bear the force in his hands, or their hands and feet were broken by his violent means, and then thrown out of the range of the smoke. There was almost no enemy in this process. Wind style, thousand faces wind. Finally, some of the sand ninjas reacted and used this wind-style ninjutsu with little attack power to blow away the white water vapor that blocked everyone's vision. Ding! Dong Shilang stopped his actions and used the ninja sword that he had just taken from the sand ninja to pick up a kunai that was attacking him. He gently shook his head, and the scarlet and evil Sharingan swept left and right. Looking at the chaos in the field, he did not rush to attack, but waited leisurely for the opponent's next move. At this time, the sand ninjas can be said to have suffered heavy losses. There are only a dozen sand ninjas who can stand steadily in the field and confront him. It is far from the momentum of nearly 30 people surrounding him at the beginning. Instead, when facing him, they seem to be a little timid and hesitate. It's not that they don't have guts, it's just that Dong Shilang's ninjutsu just now scared them. They thought the enemy was a turtle in a jar, but in the blink of an eye, it turned into a beast that eats people without leaving any bones. They couldn't accept it for a while. At this time, every sand ninja who could still stand in the field consumed a huge amount of chakra. In addition to the sand ninjas that were just beaten by the opponent, there were so many of them, and most of their living forces were wiped out by the opponent in a blink of an eye. How could they fight? How is it possible? If the opponent has such strength, how could they hide? At this time, some sand ninjas couldn't help muttering to themselves. It was really too big a contrast. They couldn't accept it for a while, and just like he said, if the opponent had such strength, how could they be chased for such a long time? Some of them had come into contact with the opponent's shadow clones. According to the situation of the shadow clones they had come into contact with, Dong Shilang, as the original body, was at most only at the level of a jonin. Unexpectedly, reality gave them a slap in the face, causing them to almost lose consciousness. Ha, 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 what do you think? I was right. With my strength, do you still think that I am not worthy of this scorch release user? Looking at the arrogant Toshiro on the opposite side, no one jumped out to refute for a while, but seemed to acquiesce to Toshiro's words with the strength shown by the other party. If they really join them, well, their sand village is really making a big profit. Chapter 155 Yearning. Clusters of flickering flames danced. The faces of the sand ninjas present were reflected in an uncertain way. This made the camp silent. There were only some noises emitted by the tents and other things that were ignited by the fire escape at the scene. At this time, these sand ninjas all understood that this mission had become extremely dangerous. With the strength just shown by the other party, it would not take much effort to kill them. Now they can only wait quietly. On the one hand, they are waiting for the other party to launch an attack, and on the other hand, they are waiting for reinforcements. I hope that the companions who see the signal can get here quickly. Only in this way can they save their lives. They just want to stop the other party. So none of the sand ninjas at the scene dared to act trashly, except, don't be scared by the other party. It is possible that this is the weakest time for the other party. He must have used a secret technique or some drug that stimulates potential to burst out such a powerful force at this time. Yearning, who was repeatedly teased, couldn't bear it anymore. She is a 16-year-old girl, although she usually dresses fashionably and boldly, but now she is being teased repeatedly in front of so many people. How can she swallow this breath? After hearing her speech, the ninjas present, although some of them were a little moved, did not show it. Instead, one by one, they all began to secretly observe Dong Shilang on the opposite side. A bunch of cowards. Seeing that his speech did not play any role, Yearning was also very angry, but there was no good way. He could only take the lead and test the opponent's strength. In fact, Dong Shilang can have the current results, not because he took some secret medicine to stimulate his potential. Instead, after a whole night of rest, although he did not fall asleep, he has recovered a lot. So when he was in the medical tent, he entered the sage mode in advance, which was able to defeat the opponent in one fell swoop. Although the preparation time of the sage technique is very long, it is not suitable in a fierce battle, but the situation tonight is perfect. As soon as he entered the camp of the sand ninja and recovered a little, he prepared this ninjutsu. There is another reason, which is because of his Sharingan. His own bloodline limit is known as the illusion eye and the insight eye, but in Dong Shilang's opinion, there is another point that is rarely shown in the original work. That is, the Sharingan is an eye that can see chakra. All the means of ninjas, whether it is ninjutsu, physical skills or illusions, are almost inseparable from the existence of chakra when they are used. And these chakras are extremely clear within the sight of the Sharingan, and there is no place to hide. This advantage is too obvious in the battle of ninjas. For example, just now, he saw Yi Kang preparing to launch a ninjutsu one step ahead, so he launched the attack in advance. In addition to its insight, after using the Sharingan personally, Dong Shilang found that the insight of the Sharingan is very similar to the bullet time he saw in his previous life. Whether it is seeing high-speed moving objects clearly or reacting in this high-speed world, it is very similar to bullet time. Coupled with the Sharingan's enhancement of illusion, it should be said that it deserves the title of one of the strongest bloodstains in the ninja world. Scorch release. Looking at Yi Kang, who was more feminine than before because of her anger, Dong Shilang did not underestimate her because she was a woman. At this time, Yi Kang was surrounded by 4 fireballs with a radius of about 1 meter, which looked like enlarged magatama. If you are not careful and are hit by these fireballs, the end will be miserable. Go! With Yi Kang's cry, the 4 fireballs floating in the air rushed straight towards Dong Shilang. Although her companions did not take action, their muscles were tense, and the little chakra left in their bodies surged, obviously ready to support the opponent at any time. Fire release. Great Dragon Fire technique did not let these fireballs get close. Dong Shilang, who had read the original work, knew that this was one of the offensive characteristics of Scorch Release. It can be controlled by the caster to fly in the air at will. As long as it brushes against the enemy, it can take away the water in the enemy's body. In view of this, Dong Shilang did not dare to let it get close. Considering that the opponent was using blood ninjutsu, Dong Shilang also deliberately performed the Great Dragon Fire technique. This ninjutsu is famous for its huge impact among many fire escape ninjutsu. It should be able to offset the opponent's attack. Boom! As Dong Shilang performed the ninjutsu, a huge flame dragon head with a body size of more than 20 meters, with a faint dragon roar, rushed towards Yi Kang. The dragon opened its mouth wide and swallowed the 4 magatama-shaped fireballs into its mouth. Then it rushed towards Yi Kang with the momentum of crushing everything. You must know that Dong Shilang at this time is in the state of sage mode. Even if it is a general ninjutsu, the power will be quite amazing. Not to mention the powerful fire escape ninjutsu such as the Great Dragon Fire technique. This fire escape, although it didn't hit the opponent, it also took the opponent's 4 fireballs and flew to a place hundreds of meters away. Boom boom! Listening to the booming explosion behind her, even Yi Kang, who regarded herself as a genius, couldn't help but twitch her eyes. She didn't expect that after the opponent had just performed a powerful large-scale fire escape ninjutsu, the next fire escape ninjutsu would also be so powerful. Watching the opponent's ninjutsu swallow the burn escape fireball that she had finally condensed, and then never returned, slightly tilting her head, through the corner of her eye, looking at the landing point of this fire escape ninjutsu, she couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. The distance was too terrifying. It was just that Dong Shilang didn't know what the other party was thinking at the moment. If he knew, he would definitely tell her. One day in the future, there will be a guy who likes to show off. Using the pseudo-sage mode, using this ninjutsu, he directly hit near the cloud layer. Yi Kang looked at the other party's figure again and took a deep breath. She took out 2 kunai from her ninja tool bag, held them upside down with both hands, and rushed towards the opponent. She was arrogant and did not intend to give up. She would delay until reinforcements arrived even if she had to risk her life. She must make this damn guy pay the price. It seems that ninjutsu is not going to work. In this case, I can only rely on physical skills. As for illusion, It was not even within her consideration. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 156. Hardship. Looking at Yi Kang, who was rushing towards her and the comrades behind her, she shook her head. She and her comrades were really endless. Through his Sharingan, Dong Shilang could clearly see that the sand ninjas behind Yi Kang were all surging with chakra in their legs, as if they were ready to explode at any time. It seems that these people still have not given up. Waving the ninja sword in his right hand casually, Dong Shilang decided not to give them hope, so as not to cause some unnecessary killings. As long as the other party does not come to provoke him, he is not interested in killing a few more sand ninjas for Konoha. If he is right, the war between Konoha and sand ninjas will end. Without any hesitation, looking at Yi Kang, who was rushing over, Dong Shilang swung his sword and slashed at the other party's upper body. Although he did not take the sword seriously at this time, the oppression caused by the long sword cutting through the air made Yi Kang's face change drastically. Ding! Although she tried her best to block the opponent's sword, the power contained in the opponent's sword made her unable to hold the kunai in her hand. How could the gap be so big? At this time, Yi Kang was also a little bit unable to accept such a result. Judging from the opponent's body shape, he was not a strong type, and she didn't expect the attack to be so terrifying. But her hands, which were already bleeding slowly, told her how cruel reality was. Even the sand ninjas behind him stopped surging on their legs after seeing this scene. Dong Shilang's sword had completely broken their idea of leaving the opponent here to wait for reinforcements. No wonder they were surprised. At this time, Dong Shilang had crushed them in all aspects, including strength, speed, defense, chakra, etc. He casually inserted the ninja sword in his hand into the ground, swept the sand ninjas present, and turned and left. He couldn't maintain this state for long. If he dragged it on for another 2 or 3 minutes, when the reinforcements of others arrived, it would be a bit troublesome. As for killing Yi Kang, he did not intend to take action at this time, not to mention that the other party was a relatively tragic character in the original work. The sand ninjas behind Yi Kang only let Yi Kang out to test their strength because they saw that he had no intention of killing. Stop, you bastard. Don't think you can leave so easily. Enduring the severe pain in his hands, Yi Kang pulled out the blade that Dong Shilang had stuck in the ground, held the blade with both hands and pointed it directly at Dong Shilang, and said with a firm look in his eyes, "Yi Kang, enough. The mission failed. Don't make a fearless sacrifice." The puppet master, with a white bandage on his head, oil paint on his face, and wearing a sand ninja combat uniform, worried that she would have an accident. So he spoke quickly, although he didn't know why the Uchiha on the opposite side didn't take ruthless action against them. But Yi Kang's repeated provocations against the other side were undoubtedly an act of seeking death. Looking at the stubborn girl on the opposite side, Dong Shilang couldn't help but have a headache. "I only showed mercy because I saw that she was destined to die in the future and she was a great beauty. Otherwise, even if those sand ninjas tried to stop me, could they still stop me from killing her in this state? This woman is a bit stubborn. Yeah, if she wasn't this kind of person, she wouldn't be sold out in the future and help others count money." Looking at the woman rushing towards him with a knife, Dong Shilang couldn't help but think secretly. In fact, Yi Kang's condition at this time was not very good. He had been busy all day, searching for his traces non-stop. In addition, in order to resist Dong Shilang's super fire escape and save more companions just now, he consumed a lot of chakra. Then he was violently slashed by him in the state of a sage, causing blood to appear on his knuckles and numbness in his hands. Forget it, considering that she will die miserably in the future. I won't bother with her and let her suffer a little. Looking at the opponent's long sword stabbing straight at him, Dong Shilang's Sharingan slowly rotated in his eyes, and began to observe the opponent's sword trajectory and flaws. He stretched out his left hand, and stretched out 2 fingers, gathering chakra on them. Then with a ding sound, he clamped the blade of the long sword in the opponent's hand, and pulled it back with force. At the same time, he muttered, Watch for the flaw. He exerted force with his right hand and punched the opponent's chest. When the opponent's left hand returned to defend himself, he turned his fist into a palm, and drove the natural energy of the palm to block the opponent's left hand. One palm. Then, old man pushing a cart, _vertical bar. A palm hit the opponent's chest firmly, and the opponent's legs were thrown off the ground and flew backwards. Then he aimed at the opponent's landing point, exerted force with his legs, and jumped into the air, with legs slightly crossed, chakra gathered in the legs, and two knees pointed at Yi Kang, who had just landed and stabilized his body. Guanyin, no, Buddha sitting in meditation, boom. As Dong Shilang's figure fell, smoke and dust rose from the place where Yi Kang was just now. However, from the scattered smoke and dust, a slender figure could be vaguely seen, fleeing in panic, while cursing, despicable, shameless, obscene. That is, cursing the other party's palm just now, touching the place that should not be touched, and also cursing the name of the other party's move. She couldn't believe her ears. There was actually someone in the world who could be so shameless. To name your own move like this is simply shameless. When she just escaped from the range of the smoke swish, a figure appeared in front of Yi Kang in an instant. Seeing this person's face, looking at the abnormal movements in his hands, Yi Kang couldn't help but turn pale. But before she could react, Poison Dragon Drill, with his right hand drooping and his knuckles buckled into a sharp cone, Dong Shilang punched Yi Kang's abdomen from bottom to top, knocking him into the air in a V-shape. Looking at Yi Kang, who fell in front of him, groaned due to the sudden heavy blow, and then opened his mouth to vomit due to the pain in his abdomen. Dong Shilang felt comfortable all over at this time, as if his soul had been detached. Even the various difficulties he would face in the future no longer existed, and the whole person was extremely relaxed. If looks could kill, Dong Shilang would have been killed countless times by Yi Kang on the opposite side this time. This is fainted. Could it be that he fainted from anger? Chapter 157 Clone. It's almost time to go. If you don't leave now, the Sage mode will probably be lifted. It's a pity, the ninja sword is lost. Otherwise, I could have used Okamoto's 0.01. In this way, today's performance will be perfect. After a few leaps, he disappeared into the forest. Dong Shilang was still thinking, did he go too far? If Yi Kang wakes up, she will definitely stab a little man and curse him. He didn't finish off Yi Kang, who was already in a coma, and even ignored the dumbfounded sand ninjas on the opposite side. These guys just fell into a downtime because of Dong Shilang's special moves. Until this moment, each of them was like a stupid goose, and didn't come back to their senses. Do you want to chase them? After a long time, someone at the scene finally came back to their senses, but this way, they were in a dead end. After a long silence, this extremely embarrassing question was finally raised by a chunin who didn't have any tact. All the sand ninjas present fell into a dead silence, and no one came out to answer the other party's questions. They were really scared by Dong Shilang just now. The other party only used a large-scale fire ninjutsu, which put so many of them in a desperate situation. They almost tried their best to block it. Even if they blocked it, the price they paid was that their chakra was almost exhausted. Not to mention that the other party cast another fire ninjutsu with equally amazing power, but with more terrifying single-target killing. How can everyone chase after it? They are completely on a different level. It's useless to keep silent like this. These medical ninjas and mid-level ninjas may be fine, but the several jonins on the scene may not be. After the mission failed, they will inevitably be punished. Although they will not die, it is possible to give them some tasks with extremely low chances of survival, or directly arrange them to die on the front line. Seeing that they really couldn't escape, and in order to reduce the possible punishment, the Jonin puppeteer who just dissuaded Yi Kang spoke at this time. Medical staff, go and see the injured Yi Kang Jonin. The rest of the Jonin, follow me to chase the enemy. The remaining chunin and genin stayed to assist the medical ninjas in taking care of the wounded. He winked at his companions as he spoke, and then took the lead to chase the place where Tawashiro had just disappeared. As soon as the group of jonin left, the remaining personnel began to get busy, treating the wounded and cleaning up the mess. This medical point seemed to be in order again, and those jonin who went to chase Tawashiro's trail, after entering the forest, did not communicate with each other, and everyone tacitly chose a path that was completely opposite to the direction where Tawashiro disappeared and began to chase. It seems that these sand ninjas are also quite familiar with how to better fool the leaders during the mission. It's not that we didn't try, but we just tried in the wrong direction. And every jonin present did not have any objection to this kind of thing. We are all human beings. No one who can become a jonin is stupid. There is no need to risk his life for the mission in the village, especially in this war that is about to fail. At this moment, behind the sand ninja medical station, on the cliff with a height of hundreds of meters, there is a figure holding a telescope and observing the every move of the sand ninjas below. Well, finally, these sand ninjas are sent away. It's about time to leave this place. Putting down the telescope in his hand, looking at the rising sun in the sky, the figure murmured, "That's right, the figure hiding alone in this place is Uchiha Toshiro." The Tawashiro who was in the camp below was just his shadow clone. After his plan was successfully implemented and he successfully sneaked into the sand ninja medical station, Tawashiro separated a shadow clone to play the wounded, and his original body sneaked out quietly and came to this place quietly. He had thought about it in advance. The shadow clone at the foot of the mountain would serve as a warning barrier. If there was any situation, it could warn his original body in advance. And once the original body hiding on the mountain was discovered, it would jump off the cliff and use the flight suit that he had spent a lot of money to make to escape again. Fortunately, this situation did not happen again, so he lost the opportunity to experience flying again. Well, the shadow clone is lifted. This is, just as Dong Shileng was about to start summoning the mountain eagle, a memory came to Dong Shileng's mind. This guy, is there any change that I don't know about? Otherwise, how could it be possible to do such a shameful thing? He never thought that his shadow clone would have such a trick. When fighting with Meixiang, he actually used the I-18 styles. He, the original body, didn't know how to complain for a while. Is it possible that deep down in my heart, I am just a middle school boy? It shouldn't be. How old am I in my heart now? Forget about these things. They are not important. It's the Sage mode, the first actual combat. It's really addictive. Feeling the feeling of the shadow clone at that time, Dong Shileng couldn't help but think with some envy. The feeling of being full of power all over the body, performing a ninjutsu at will that makes the jonin unable to resist, is really intoxicating even if his current strength is limited. Not counting the Sharingan, it's only at a very high level, but once entering the Sage mode, the jonin, it's a pity that it takes half an hour to charge and 5 minutes to use. If I can enter the Sage mode at any time, wouldn't it be? Speaking of Meixiang's touch, is really good. While yieing in his heart, his hands did not stop, and several seals were formed. Spirit summoning technique. He stood on the back of the mountain eagle again, flying high into the sky at a high speed, and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Even if there are some accidents in the middle, the mission still has to continue. And can I live a life of traveling around the ninja world and meeting different two-dimensional girls every day? Chapter 158. Lin, the 44th year of Konoha. The once prosperous streets seemed a little depressed because of the continuous war. Some pedestrians who occasionally passed by no longer had the cheerfulness on their faces. Even when they went out on the street, they looked dull and hurried. The war had been going on for more than 2 years, and the entire Konoha village was deeply mired in the quagmire because of this sudden war. Not only these ordinary people, but even the ninja families who were usually high and mighty would hold memorial ceremonies from time to time, to remember these deceased relatives and friends. Brother Dong Shileng, you are also in the village. It's great. Are you free tonight? I'll treat you to ramen. A young man who was holding a large bag of sundries, in a hurry, saw a senior of the same clan who was taking good care of him, and hurriedly greeted him. At this time, he was very different from before. He was no longer a dispensable kid, but an in-service ninja recognized by Konoha. It was not easy to meet this senior who took good care of him, so he could thank him properly. It just so happens that I have completed a lot of tasks recently and saved a lot of money, but if I can invite Brother Tawashiro at the same time. While thinking this, he couldn't help looking at the girl beside him. It's a bit and Rin and Kakashi. Hearing someone calling his name, the figure who just hurriedly passed by on the street looked back, and didn't expect that it was the future big boss who called him. Looking at the other person's sweaty appearance at this time, and the big bag in his hand, and the two companions beside him, Toshiro smiled knowingly. This kid looks really hard to hate now. Compared with the future, Uchiha Obito at this time is still quite popular, especially among the old people in the village. Because of his selfless help over the years, this kid has won the recognition of almost all the old people in Konoha. Of course, this also includes an old man who has defected from Konoha. Throwing all these things out of his mind, Toshiro greeted him generously. Although he had changed a lot in the future, Obito at this time was still easy to get along with. Toshiro-senpai, are you going back to Konoha to rest? Also, thank you for the training notes. Nohara Rin, who had just discovered Toshiro's trace because of Obito's shout, ignored the package in her hand and greeted Toshiro, and bowed to him. Rin, don't be so polite. Toshiro is my fellow tribesman. You don't have to be so polite. Seeing his sweetheart being so polite to Toshiro, Obito felt a little heartbroken and said sourly, "It's okay, Obito." Nohara Rin smiled back at her companion, ignoring Obito's kindness and insisting on bowing to Toshiro. She was not as heartless as her companion. The notes that Toshiro-senpai gave her helped her a lot, and she should really thank him. It turned out that half a year ago, when Toshiro returned to the village to deliver supplies, he accidentally met his younger brother Obito from the same clan. Knowing that the goddess in his heart was having a headache recently because of learning medical ninjutsu, in order to show his courtesy, he pestered Toshiro at that time, hoping that the other party could help. He knew that Toshiro had made good achievements in medical ninjutsu. For his goddess, he also risked his life and promised that after he became Hokage, he would take good care of Toshiro and let him become the candidate for Hokage of Konoha. Hearing this, Toshiro almost couldn't hold it back on the spot. He was madly complaining in his heart that this kid didn't know what he would do in the future. Otherwise, he didn't know how he would react, but he didn't refuse, but asked Obito to copy his medical ninjutsu training notes for so many years and let him hand it over to Nohara Rin. I hope that this guy who never succeeded in confessing until his death can seize the opportunity and complete his lifelong regret. But looking at the current situation, this kid didn't do what he said at all. Ah, Lin, you are too polite. I also heard that idiot Obito often whispering in my ear about how you usually take care of this reckless guy, so he let him give you the notebook. After saying that, he glanced at the idiot in front of him. Such a good confession opportunity was missed. You deserve to be a spare tire until you die. You know, at that time, Toshiro could have spent a lot of brain cells to help this kid with strategies. It seems that it was wasted in vain. What are you talking about? Brother Toshiro, didn't you see that Lin is talented and kind-hearted, so you asked me to give the notebook to Lin? Lin didn't react after hearing this, but Obito, the person involved, became embarrassed. While talking, he secretly glanced at the goddess next to him, with a look of lust, which made Toshiro on the opposite side couldn't stand it. The children in the ninja world are really precocious. It's still a love triangle with Konoha's strong characteristics. Kakashi, are you getting along well with your companions recently? He shook his head, ignored the two brats, and said hello to the silent little white-haired boy. This guy still hasn't changed much. He's still so cold, but compared to the beginning, he no longer has that kind of despair, dead and cold aura all over his body. He has become more like a normal human being. I think this is also due to the two brats beside him. Twitching his lips, Toshiro was really a little powerless for the other party's response. Just now he thought that this kid had changed a little. Unexpectedly, the change he felt was only from not responding before to him. This brat is really hopeless. Will the Obito treat us, or let's get together? I wonder if Toshiro Sr. has time? It has to be said that this little girl Lin is good at livening up the atmosphere. With just a few words, she successfully distracted the attention of her two companions. Tonight? No problem. I'll be there on time. At the BBQ bar. After thinking for a while, Toshiro did not refuse and readily accepted Lin's invitation. He even booked the place for the dinner in advance, completely ignoring Obito's opinion. Hey, I don't have. But when this kid met Lin's inquiring eyes, he immediately shut up. Chapter 159 Kushina, Konoha Village. BBQQ. Ha, Obito, do you have any opinion on my arrival? A tall figure with red hair hooked his hand around the short Obito's neck, slowly tightened his arm, and asked in a gentle tone, you know, I will come here for Lin's sake. You reckless guy, you don't have such a big face. Ah, let go, I'm going to be strangled to death by you, a violent maniac. I really don't understand how a gentle person like Minato likes a violent girl like you. What? I didn't hear it clearly, can you say it again? As she spoke, the woman with a conspicuous long red hair not only did not loosen her right hand, but also slowly increased the strength of her hand. She strangled the stubborn kid in front of her even tighter. Kushina-san, don't be so angry. Obito didn't mean it. Nohara-rin saw this and hurriedly came out to make peace and help her companion who was asking for death to plead for mercy. She didn't know what was going on. Sister Kushina was obviously concerned about Obito's situation, but every time she communicated with him, it would eventually turn out like this. This was probably the special way they communicated. Rin is still the best. She's cute and so considerate. Come. As she spoke, the mother of the future protagonist, Uzumaki Kushina, who was known as the Blood Red Pepper, let go of Obito's neck, hugged Nohara-rin next to her and kissed her. At the same time, she didn't forget to scold him. This idiot, always thinking about the front and not the back, must have caused a lot of trouble to Rin. If you can become half as smart as Rin, you won't be so worried. Ha! I'm Uchiha Obito, who will become the Hokage in the future. Who wants you to worry about me? Boom. Ah, here it comes again. Here it comes again. You are really a violent girl. Obito, who was punched, hugged his severely injured brain, and tears welled up for a while, and at the same time, he didn't forget to accuse the other party of violence. Ha, you careless, clumsy kid, who are you talking about violence again? Believe it or not, as soon as he stepped into the box, what Toshiro saw was such a funny scene, which really made people speechless. At this time, Kushina was just in her early 20s, and her temper was quite characteristic of the Uzumaki clan, and she seemed irritable and easily angered. Of course, this was also due to Obito's suicide. Although Uzumaki Kushina scolded the other party, she was still very concerned about this kid in her heart. She was afraid that the other party would get hurt on the battlefield because of her reckless character and her habit of showing off. That's why she often taught this kid a lesson, hoping that he would remember it for a long time. Although the other party's character has obvious flaws, he is really a person that people can't hate. Whether it is for the village, ninjas, companions or Hokage, he has a sincere enthusiasm. This made her, who had seen all this, very worried that one day she would also receive news of the other party's death. Ah, Senior Toshiro, you are here too. Hurry up and take a seat, we are waiting for you. Seeing the door of the box open, Lin turned around and looked, and was the first to notice Toshiro's arrival, and hurriedly greeted him. At the same time, she gave Toshiro a somewhat apologetic smile, as if she was apologizing for the rude behavior of her companions and the teacher's wife. Sorry for the wait. After greeting, she was a little surprised to see the situation in the box. She didn't expect that even their teachers and their wives came together. This was still a little surprising. Toshiro slowly sat down on the empty seat, and greeted his desk mates Minato Namikaze and Kakashi Hitake. As for Obito and Kushina, the two of them are still competing with each other, foreheads touching, neither of them giving in. They didn't notice the arrival of Toshiro at all. I'm sorry to embarrass you, Kushina is not like this usually. As Kushina's boyfriend, Namikaze Minato hurriedly spoke up at this time, trying to save his girlfriend's image. While speaking, he laughed awkwardly. He also knew that the current situation was really not convincing. Of course, seeing that Kushina-senpai cares so much about Obito, I feel relieved. He didn't expect that it was just an ordinary gathering. He originally thought that Toshiro and Kakashi would be the three little brats together, but he didn't expect that these two would also be brought out. While greeting Namikaze Minato, he also looked at Kushina's red hair opposite him, and at the same time felt that it was exactly the same as in the TV series. It was really a bit dazzling red. What are you looking at, Humphrey? Do you have any problem with my red hair? Kushina Uzumaki, who was quarreling with Obito nearby, felt that someone was paying attention to her hair color, which made her very unhappy. As a member of the Uzumaki clan, she was very sensitive. She could sense it when the other party just glanced at her. If she didn't feel any malicious intent, she would not just say one sentence to the other party and be done with it. She must let the other party know that the name of Blood Red Pepper is not for nothing. I didn't expect that Miss Uzumaki would come to visit. I was really rude just now. I was just recalling some old things. Humphrey, you know what's good for you. Kushina, who already had Minato Nimike's as her heart filler, was no longer as sensitive as when she was a child. Seeing that the other party was so sensible, she did not pursue him relentlessly. If she had been in her previous temper, she would have taught him a lesson if the other party had just glanced at her. Now that everyone is here, let's get started. Minato Nimike's breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that his girlfriend didn't lose her temper. He knew that those classmates who had prejudices against Kushina's hair would end up in a miserable situation. When he saw the invited Toshiro arrive, he quickly interrupted the two people who were still playing around. It was a complete accident that the two of them would attend this dinner together. When Lin, who had just completed her mission, told him the news, he hadn't thought about participating in their activities. But after hearing this, Kushina on the side became quite active. She was very depressed in Konoha, and it was rare for her to have time to relax, so he had no intention of stopping her. After all, as a Jinchuriki, Kushina had to go through layers of approval every time she went out on a mission, which was quite troublesome. At the same time, in order to protect her safety, the number of missions was also quite small. It would be nice to make her happy. Chapter 160 Share. Lin, these two guys, have they always been like this? Looking at Obito and Kakashi fighting over the barbecue on the table, Toshiro looked at Lin helplessly and asked. These two guys were really too much. They not only fought over the barbecue, but also the drinks and vegetables on the side. They often fought over the little things on the table, making it impossible for the bystanders to have a good meal. Senior Toshiro, please forgive me. Facing this question, she was also very troubled. These two guys have always been like this since they met. They always quarreled over some trivial matters, and there were some differences in their concepts. In addition, speaking of which, Kakashi, inspired by your application of lightning escape, I developed a ninjutsu with good power. Okay. Continue. As he spoke, Toshiro took out a scroll from his pocket and threw it to Kakashi, facing the other party's puzzled eyes. He just gestured to the other party to take a look. The scroll actually contains the famous ninjutsu lightning release, Chidori, that Kakashi will develop in the future. He has already plagiarized the other party's idea, so there is no need to keep this ninjutsu for himself. He generously shared it with Kakashi, otherwise, Kakashi without Chidori would feel awkward. He did not read the contents of the scroll here. After a glance, Kakashi put the scroll in his ninja tool bag and planned to study it when he returned home. What about me? What about me? Seeing this, Obito on the side was not happy. He quickly looked at Toshiro and asked for his share. Hey, didn't I give you your share a long time ago? What are you talking about? In fact, Toshiro also gave this guy a scroll a long time ago, probably when Obito had just become a genin. The ninjutsu recorded in it was a ninjutsu that Toshiro carefully selected and felt was the most suitable for this guy. But that ninjutsu has no power. It can only create a clone to help those old ladies and do some small things. Dong Shilang prepared the ninjutsu of Shadow Clone for this guy. He felt that this guy was always late for helping old ladies cross the road, picking up things, etc., which was really a ninja. A simple shadow clone, wouldn't it solve all these problems? And he is always late, which is too unprofessional. How could it be? This is a very practical ninjutsu. When you encounter some dangers, you can use this ninjutsu to test it. It should be very practical. Humphrey, this idiot, his own chakra control is not up to standard. Once, when he was helping an old man, the shadow clone disappeared, and then rushed over in a hurry. After that, he never dared to use this ninjutsu to help those old people again. Kakashi, who was standing aside, made a sharp finishing blow at this time. All the embarrassing things of Obito were revealed. That's true. To use what Toshiro said in his previous life, His teammates are too weak to lead. This guy is now 10 years old. Unexpectedly, his chakra control ability is still so poor, he can't even master the shadow clone technique, which makes Toshiro, who wants to help, helpless. Asshole. Kakashi, don't worry about these. When I succeed in awakening the Sharingan like Toshiro, then not to mention a mere Sharingan, even the Hokage will be in my pocket. At that time, I will definitely carve my iconic goggles and my Sharingan on the Hokage rock. After being exposed by the other party, Obito did not have the slightest intention of repenting. Instead, he spoke shamelessly. The tone of his vows made Toshiro, who was sitting opposite him, look at him with a sidelong glance. Oh, really? Of course. Then when the time comes, do you plan to carve the Sharingan on the outside or inside of the goggles? At this time, Obito suddenly got stuck. He simulated in his mind that he would carve the Sharingan on the rock statue, and then add the goggles. This wouldn't work, because he wouldn't be able to see the Sharingan. He could only carve the Sharingan on the outside of the goggles. But wouldn't it be, imagining that picture in his mind, it was really Obito. What do you care? Anyway, I will definitely become the Hokage by then. Obito couldn't stand the picture of his Sharingan carved on the goggles, and his eyes bulged out, and said angrily, well, when Obito officially becomes a Chunin, I will give you a fire escape secret technique. How about that? Seeing this pair of happy enemies, and the tendency to continue quarreling, Toshiro, who caused all this, had to make a promise. This guy, not long after, was ruthlessly eliminated by this guy Gay when he participated in the Chunin exam. Although I didn't have the chance to see it myself, but thinking about the scene at that time, I really don't know how to complain about this idiot. Once his throat was choked by candy, and another time he was distracted by Nohara Rin next to him. Both times he was KO'd by Kai in one move. It's really unbelievable. Speaking of which, I have to thank Toshiro. The three of them are my subordinates. I didn't expect to get such great help from you. The opposite Minato Namikaze spoke at this time. He himself is not a medical ninja. He was busy with the things that the Hokage told him some time ago. He didn't have time to guide his disciples. Thanks to Toshiro's help, he saved a lot of trouble. Now he gave Kakashi a lightning escape. Senior Minato, you are too kind. They are all Obito's companions. They usually take care of him. As a fellow tribesman of Obito, I should thank them on their behalf. It should be said that Minato Namikaze is really busy now. Whether it is on the battlefield, his girlfriend, or his disciples, he has to take care of all aspects. This also indirectly led to his lack of attention to his disciples, which made Obito fail this Chunin exam. There are gains and losses, but even he himself would not have thought that for the sake of his dream, to protect Konoha, and to protect his wife who is the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, his neglect would bring such serious consequences. Chapter 161 Ignore. Minato Namikaze is an absolute genius. He defeated countless geniuses just by relying on his talent. It is no exaggeration to say that he is a perfect ninja. When he was young, he successfully rescued Uzumaki Kushina, the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, from the Cloud Ninja team. From then on, he gained his own love. If it weren't for the tragic ending, he would have been a perfect starting point male protagonist. When he was young, he showed extraordinary ninja talent and was valued by Jiraiya. After being cultivated, he burst out with a light that people couldn't look directly at. It can be said that no one can learn the Flying Thunder God technique, and he played it so well that even the second-generation Hokage after the Impure World reincarnation had to admit that he could not match him in speed. He successfully realized his dream at the age of 24 and became a Hokage. How does that sentence go? He got a promotion and salary increase, married a beautiful and rich woman, and became a CEO, and he has since reached the peak of his life. But under these halos, he has to admit that he lacks the necessary care for his disciples. It's not that there's anything wrong with him being a team leader, but his focus is obviously not on his disciples. For example, when Obito got into trouble in the original work, he had a lot of responsibility. Everyone went to perform the mission together, but Namikaze Minato, the team leader, asked the 12-year-old Hutei Kakashi to take his two friends to complete the mission. He went to support the front line. This also laid the groundwork for Obito's accident. Why did he do this? Maybe it was for peace, maybe it was to protect his companions in the village, but it is undeniable that for his disciples, his actions at the time were very irresponsible. Without his existence, his subordinates went their separate ways not long after Nohara Rin's accident. Although Nohara Rin is a medical ninja, her own situation is really too weak. She was kidnapped at any time. Don't you have the responsibility as a teacher? As a medical ninja who can go on missions with the team, not to mention being able to resist and heal like Tsunade, but at least let her do it to protect her own safety. Your own instant body technique and perception ninjutsu are so powerful, you should always teach them a few life-saving skills. Although Kakashi finally repented because of what Obito said, it was too late. In the end, Kakashi, who was blind in one eye, was hit by a rock falling from the cave because of his blindness in one eye when he rescued Nohara Rin. In order to save his companions, Obito fell into the trap that Madara carefully prepared for him. As a golden flash, didn't he know that his team members had irreconcilable ideological differences? The answer is obviously no, it's just that he has a fluke mentality in his heart, but reality played a joke on him. The thing he least wanted to happen finally happened, and the consequences were unacceptable to him as a teacher. It cannot be said that his choice was wrong, but the ninja world is too complicated, and Obito is too sensitive. If something unexpected happens to Rin, he will immediately fall into a state of collapse. Given his situation, if something happens to Rin and Kakashi, it would be strange if nothing goes wrong. In fact, before Obito became a ninja, Toshiro had advised Obito's grandmother and told her about his situation. With the old lady's age and wisdom, she should understand what he meant. But for some reason, Obito still became a ninja. Toshiro had no good solution. He was just an outsider and it was not easy for him to make a decision for him. Of course, there was also a selfishness in it. If Toshiro, the big boss behind the scenes, did not become a ninja, would all the problems that happened to his family in the future be solved? But the final result disappointed him. He didn't know whether it was because of the driving force of the world or the trick of Madara behind the scenes. Ah, that's right, Lin. I don't know if the medical notebook will be of any use to you. Those are just random notes I made during my usual practice. I don't know if you can understand them. Dong Shilang's practice notes continued some of his habits from his previous life. There were a lot of medical science knowledge he had seen on TV and the internet in his previous life interspersed in them. For ordinary people, if they are not very familiar with it, it is difficult to understand it in a short time. No problem. Although it is a bit difficult to read, it is acceptable. Oh, this is the best. If there is anything you don't understand, you can come and ask me. If I am not at home, leave the problem to Obito. If I come back, he should know. Thank you again, Senior Toshiro. The little girl stood up again and saluted Toshiro again. Well, there is no need to be so polite. There is a fool who has already thanked you for you. While speaking, Toshiro pointed to the barbecue on the table and said, the meat is already grilled. If you don't eat it, it will be over-roasted, and it will not taste good. Then he unceremoniously picked up several pieces of barbecue into his bowl, and at the same time changed the subject and smiled grimly at Obito. Obito, is the money you brought enough today? I can prepare to do a big job. While speaking, he also showed his bright white teeth to the other party. Nani, seeing this scene, the kid couldn't hold it back on the spot, and his whole face turned a little green. He knew too well the appetite of his good brother. In order to help Lin get the notebook, he promised a lot of benefits, but in the end he was slaughtered by the other party. That was still Atakiraku ramen, but those empty bowls that were almost as high as his own hurt his wallet. Today, he changed to BBQQ, which was obviously several levels higher in consumption. This time, he really wanted to. Seeing the embarrassed look of the future big boss, Dong Shulang laughed very happily. Let you be a licking dog. Now you know how powerful it is. He didn't intend to pay attention to the other party at first, but this guy, for the goddess in his mind, was quite determined. Every time Dong Shulang went back to Konoha to deliver supplies, he would follow him persistently, and it can be said that he would stick to him like a piece of taffy. He was really pestered and had no choice. Chapter 162 Sealing Technique. Miss Kushina, may I ask you for some advice on sealing techniques?" Looking at Uzumaki Kushina, who was sitting next to Minato Namikaze and looked like a little bird, Toshiro couldn't believe his eyes. He had just seen how irritable this girl was when dealing with others, and how she treated Obito badly. But at this moment, she was like a lady from a noble family, with gentle movements and proper manners, like a completely different person, which made Toshiro embarrassed to speak. But the opportunity was really rare, so he would rather ask, "Hey, do you also know about sealing techniques?" Although Minato had just introduced the Uchiha on the opposite side, he was still quite surprised that he didn't see Kushina, who he didn't care about at all. He didn't expect that the other party would ask him questions related to sealing techniques. But considering that the other party was quite caring towards Kakashi, Obito and Rin, he didn't care about the other party's rudeness just now. "As for sealing techniques, I do have some knowledge. If the questions you ask are not too troublesome, I will try to answer them." Although she had a good relationship with her boyfriend's disciples, and there was no problem for her to answer some questions related to sealing techniques, she did not ignore the fact that the other party was an Uchiha. Her answer was also quite standard, quite humble, and at the same time left room for maneuver. It's not a profound question, but there are some runes related to sealing techniques. I have always been confused about their specific functions and meanings. Today, I have a rare opportunity to meet Ms. Uzumaki, so I can't help but be tempted. Of course, if it involves the secrets of the Uzumaki clan, I dare not ask too much. Some secrets of various ninja families are still taken seriously by people in this world. It can be regarded as a monopoly on knowledge, and generally they will not be easily passed on to others. This is also the reason why Dong Shilang only asked a few simple questions about spells. He and the other party are not related, and it is impossible to expect the other party to tell everything. It was good to get answers to some basic questions that I had been asking. "You have good vision. There are a few runes that I don't understand. Tell me about them." She was just being modest. In her opinion, in Konoha now, except for Minato Namikaze, no one's sealing skills can match her. The descendant of Uzumaki, the ninjas in the sealing class, in addition to being able to maintain the sealing barrier of the village, can only follow the procedures when they perform sealing techniques. It is their limit to perform sealing techniques according to the procedures. There is no comparison between them and her and Minato. Seeing that the other party agreed, Dong Shilang drew a few symbols on the table with his fingers on the spot. As he completed the action, the rune pattern immediately appeared on the table. Moreover, these runes were glowing with a bright blue light, which was clearly visible on the table, which opened the eyes of the three children beside them. Amazing. Senior Tawashiru's chakra control skills are really unfathomable. Nohara Rin was the first to express her opinion, covering her cherry lips with her small hands to hide her mouth that was wide open due to shock. As a medical ninja, she had a certain understanding of the fine control of chakra. To achieve the same level as the other party, it would be impossible without more than 10 years of hard training. Even Minato Namikaze on the opposite side was a little surprised at this time. As the saying goes, an expert can tell the quality of a skill with just one move. Tawashiru showed off his skills and got the other party's affirmation on the spot. It's not that he can't do this level of chakra control, but he didn't expect that the other party could already do this at this age, which surprised him. These runes? These are mainly used to strengthen the structure of the seal, and this one acts as an energy circuit equivalent to a chakra, which helps the stability of the technique. Just a casual glance, she knew all the runes drawn by Dong Shilang, and answered Dong Shilang's questions quite easily. As for the surprise of the little ghosts, neither Dong Shilang, Kushina and Minato took it too seriously, so it would be good to let these little ghosts know the gap. This can also arouse their competitive spirit and let them know that in the world of ninjas, there are still people who are better than you. And the three little ghosts, after the initial shock and curiosity, looked at the symbols drawn by Dong Shilang, which looked like ghosts' paintings. He and Kushina were no longer interested in the conversation that gave them a headache. Gradually, an atmosphere of 3 big and 3 small people eating and chatting was formed. With the addition of Minato Namikaze, Dong Shilang asked some theoretical knowledge related to the seal technique, but fortunately, These questions did not touch on some specific techniques. With the addition of Minato, the questions became more and more in-depth. Toshiro also expressed some opinions that made them shine from time to time, which turned this one-sided consultation into a discussion on the sealing technique. Of course, Toshiro's level is still a certain distance away from Minato and Kushina, whether in terms of the time they were exposed to the sealing technique or the level of knowledge they have acquired. However, some novel ideas brought by Toshiro from the industrial era of his previous life have made up for this shortcoming. At the end of the dinner, both Toshiro and Minato felt that they had not finished. It's very happy today. Then, I look forward to the opportunity to discuss with Minato Sr. and Kushina next time. Goodbye. After saying that, he waved and said goodbye to the other party. Even Obito, who was still paying the bill at the counter, didn't care. At this time, the boy was looking at the bill in his hand with a sad face, looking like he had no desire to live. In order to avoid being silently accused by a heartbroken kid on the way home, he decided to leave first. Toshiro, it's nice to chat with you. Goodbye. Minato, who was also preparing to leave first, said hello to Toshiro and prepared to leave with Kushina today. He discussed the topic of sealing techniques with him, and some of his ideas also benefited him and Kushina a lot. But at this time, compared with these sealing techniques, it is more important to accompany his girlfriend, especially in this war period. He can spend less time with her. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 163. Tired. Just as he was about to take a step, Toshiro remembered something and quickly called Kakashi to explain it to him. Even Minato and the other man who were about to leave stopped and looked at Toshiro in confusion. Kakashi, this lightning ninjutsu I'm giving you is called Chidori. Although it is very powerful, its shortcomings are also obvious. If your dynamic vision and your own reflex nerves are not good enough, you should not use it easily, otherwise, you may hurt yourself. Hurt yourself? Yes, when you use the ninjutsu, a large amount of high-density lightning chakra will be gathered in your hands. At the same time, under the stimulation of the lightning attribute, you will burst out at an astonishing speed. It is very likely that after you use the ninjutsu, you will not be able to control the ninjutsu well, but hurt yourself. Kakashi frowned and thought for a while, then nodded to Toshiro, indicating that he already knew. In terms of speed, he was still very confident and did not take Toshiro's words too seriously. Seeing this, Toshiro didn't know what to say. With Kakashi's talent as the original creator, it is unlikely that there will be any major problems. In fact, in his previous life, he was always very puzzled by one thing: how could the Chidori ninjutsu, which had such a great sound and light effect when it was performed, be defined as an assassination ninjutsu? However, these were minor issues and not worth spending too many brain cells on. At this time, it was better to think about how to survive the cruel Third World War. He did not have the luck of Obito and Kakashi, who could still stay in Konoha village and do some simple ninja tasks at this time. He was already 12 years old, but he really began to face those cruel frontal battlefields. If it were not for the mountain eagle, he would not even have this short respite now. This is also the reason why a large number of family members died in the frontal battlefield recently. At this time, the Uchiha family had to send some ninjas over the age of 12 to the frontal battlefield, and Dong Shilang obviously meets this standard. Don't forget, he is a genius who opened the Sharingan at the age of 8. If he doesn't go to the battlefield, it's really unreasonable. It's really comfortable. Dong Shilang, who had just finished his meal, didn't rush home at this time, but came to the hot spring street. He needs to relax himself. Years of boring training and cruel battlefields have made his nerves tense. Proper rest can still relieve his condition. He didn't even practice shadow clones today, so that he could relax himself and breathe a sigh of relief. Although shadow clones have many conveniences, fatigue will still accumulate unconsciously, so he has to relax himself from time to time. The number of his shadow clones has increased from single digits to nearly 20, which is 3 or 4 times more than before. Unlike before when his chakra was not up to par, after he had natural energy, chakra was no longer a shackle that restricted him from creating more shadow clones. Instead, his mental endurance, which he had not paid much attention to before, severely limited his growth rate. Although he had awakened the Sharingan, the long-term study of more than 20 shadow clones still made his spirit face great challenges. When he removed the shadow clones now, he did it one by one slowly. He had also tried to remove more than 20 shadow clones at a time. At that time, the knowledge, experience, fatigue, etc. that followed the removal of the shadow clone technique, various physical and mental experiences almost caused him to die of cerebral infarction. Even though he was prepared at the time, he still fell into a coma and did not wake up until the afternoon of the next day. In the next 3 days, he was like an eggplant hit by frost, wilting and unable to raise any spirits. Even Akayamika was a little curious about his situation and wanted to check his body, but he fooled her. And where he was the front line camp, where any unexpected situation could happen. If it was at a critical moment, he would really be killed. At the same time, he had to sigh that Uzumaki Naruto was really a cheater. He was a descendant of the Uzumaki clan, the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, and his own chakra was huge. His mental energy was also so abnormal, which was a bit unfair. You have to know that this guy can support 1,000 shadow clones and the fatigue brought by practicing at the same time. And when the other party released the shadow clone, he did not do any buffering, which was too unreasonable. I, and Akaya, couldn't hold it in the face of this situation, and my brain crashed at that time. You, a Uzumaki family, didn't become an idiot because of this, which obviously has a bug. Tawashiro, who was puzzled, didn't figure it out in the end, and could only comfort himself that everyone has his own tricks. He is not the protagonist, but he should be able to find a way that suits him. Finally, he set his sights on the sealing technique. If it was just a simple sealing of memories and chakra, Dongshilan could do it himself. The shadow clone training over the years was no joke. In addition, his family already had a collection of this kind of things, so it was easy to do. But just sealing alone would not have much effect. Once the seal was lifted, all the memories and fatigue would all flow into his brain and body. He couldn't seal them one by one. How much would it cost? He could only find another way to see if he could make some changes to the existing sealing technique and open a hole in the complete sealing technique, so that the memories and fatigue that would follow the chakra and return to his body could flow slowly into his body through this small hole. In this way, wouldn't the problem be solved? Thinking of this, Dongshilan had to give a thumbs up to his wit. But when he really implemented it, he encountered a lot of trouble. If he was learning a complete sealing technique, these would not be difficult for him. Even if the level of this sealing technique was very high, reaching the S level, he was also confident that he could learn it in a short time. All those years of theoretical knowledge were not learned in vain. However, opening a hole in a complete sealing technique while maintaining the effect of the sealing technique was much more difficult than he had imagined. This was undoubtedly more difficult than developing a new sealing technique. In recent times, he had lost a lot of hair in order to solve this problem, but there was no good solution. Today, he happened to meet these two masters of sealing techniques. He could only try to see if he could find some inspiration from them. Fortunately, the exchange just now did not disappoint him. Chapter 164 Lurking. The diffused smoke and the bumpy ground. From time to time, there would be 1 or 2 fallen corpses, lying quietly on the ground, motionless, and losing any vitality. The breath of fear, death, and killing can be seen everywhere here. The ninjas on this land have become more like wounded beasts. They are all quietly licking their wounds, ready to throw themselves into the next fight at any time. Peace, village, and so on. At this time, nothing matters. Killing the enemy on the opposite side and avenging their companions and relatives are more likely to make these beasts trapped in killing burst out with more powerful potential than usual than those illusory things. This is the front line of Konoha's battlefield in the Land of Grass, and our protagonist Uchiha Toshiro is hiding behind a rock that can cover his figure at this time. Carefully disguise and hide your tracks, and try not to make any movements or sounds that may expose yourself. Since last year, The village defeated the Sand Ninja who invaded the border at the front line of Kikyo Mountain in the Land of Fire. Before the frontline ninjas could breathe a sigh of relief and celebrate that they had finally survived a war, the war between Konoha and the Land of Earth broke out. Seeing that their allies the Sand Ninja were so useless and had lost all their functions, and could no longer consume Konoha's strength for them, the Rock Ninjas who had already stationed troops at the border of the Land of Grass finally couldn't help but go down in person and began to fulfill their duties as allies. The entire Land of Grass was turned into a battlefield for Konoha and the Rock Ninjas to fight each other. The Sand Ninjas next door were so angry that they cursed. However, how could the barking of a group of losers be taken seriously by the short but resolute third Tsuchika Joanaki? These were all part of his plan. Could it be that he still had to talk about the spirit of Bushido with those poor guys in the desert, abide by the verbal agreement between each other, and then let other villages take advantage of their Land of Earth? How could this happen? I'm afraid that the Sand Ninjas thought of this before the war, but reality made them choose to go to war first. Although there are many secrets between the various ninja villages, how could they hide the fact that each of them is preparing for the next war from the old hands who have experienced the First and Second Ninja World Wars? The arms race between the 5 major countries has quietly begun when those ordinary ninjas are still immersed in peace. It's just that in this arena, the Sand Ninja Village, which has a weak financial foundation, has been at a disadvantage from the beginning for various reasons. In addition, the inexplicable disappearance of the third-generation Kazekage of their own family made them unable to bear this consumption and launched a war brazenly. I think they themselves did not have much hope for the Land of Earth's joint attack on Konoha Covenant, but the situation at that time was beyond their control. If I don't take advantage of the fact that I still have a breath left, I'm afraid that when the war breaks out, this ally of mine will be the first to pounce on me and turn my flesh and blood into its own nutrients. The current situation is not so urgent for the Sand Village. With the rich fire country in front of them, the treasury has been empty, and there is no money left from the people. Instead, they can wait for the price to see who will be the winner of this war. Then they can try to get a share. Of course, if someone can afford it, they don't mind accepting some war-related tasks. Isn't it the job of a ninja to accept tasks and get paid? Well, here I come. Just when Dong Shilang tried his best to hide his presence, he felt something vaguely, and did not reveal his figure and stick his head out to check the situation. Instead, he pointed his sword with one hand, concentrated his mind and breath, focused all his attention, and began to feel the slightest movement in the outside world. His perception ability is becoming stronger and stronger as he develops his body. Especially after he cultivated into the Sage mode, it has been greatly improved. Now he can clearly feel the changes in the situation within a range of 500 meters. But there is a premise for this. He must concentrate his attention, otherwise, his senses will only give warnings to some discordant places within a range of 5 meters around him. This is also a relatively normal situation. Otherwise, a person's spirit and brain are always in a state of perceiving and analyzing the surrounding situation. Even if the second generation comes, it is estimated that he will be exhausted. The target is 5.12.18 people. There are 6 combat teams. As his attention is focused, Dong Shilang's senses begin to spread across the battlefield, and then he knows the number of these attackers. Look at the strength of the chakra. It's a temporary team led by a Jonin. As the perception becomes deeper, the chakra reactions of these people are presented one by one in Dong Shilang's mind. 1 Jonin, plus 3 special Jonin. The remaining chakra strengths are all reactions at the level of some Chunin. Slowly put his hands behind his back, slowly made a few gestures, and then Dong Shilang began to prepare. Just the situation he sensed showed that this was an elite team of rock ninjas. Needless to say, their purpose was to target them. As for the chakra strength of a ninja, it does not necessarily represent the true strength of the ninja, but at this time, it is a blessing to have some general information about the opponent, and no one will ask for anything. Holding his breath and quietly waiting for these people to approach, Dong Shilang did not act rashly, but just silently felt a group of rock ninjas, which flew past him less than 20 meters away. As his sage mode became more and more proficient and integrated into the natural state, he could better apply it to hiding his own breath, just like now. Although there were also perception-type ninjas among the rock ninjas, at this time, they did not find any traces of Dong Shilang's existence. Whether it was smell, chakra, body temperature, etc., Dong Shilang hid these aspects very well, without revealing any flaws. The whole person was like an ordinary rock, blending well into the surrounding environment, not attracting any attention from the other party, not to mention that he was still 20 meters away from him. Even if he passed by him, if he didn't really see him with his eyes, he probably wouldn't be able to detect his existence. Chapter 165 Hunting. The breeze gently blew away the smoke and revealed the land of grass, a land riddled with holes. On the grass at the edge of a forest, a group of rock ninjas rushed past, breaking the dead silence. This place was a battlefield where Konoha and rock ninjas fought. Just a few kilometers away, some rumbling explosions could be heard from time to time. Occasionally, you could see huge summoned beasts flashing by, accompanied by huge flames, screams, and explosions. That was the main battlefield where the elders of Toshiro were, and they were just doing some work to protect the flanks or guard the main camp under their protection. It was not that the elders of these clans were cruel and had to send their nephews and grandchildren to the battlefield early. As Uchiha, it was really difficult for them to do such a thing. However, the position allocated to them by the Konoha command was too large. With the power of their Uchiha family, how could they compare with the entire rock ninja village? Even though all of them fought to the death, the number of rock ninjas did not decrease. Instead, as the seeds of hatred grew, the number of ninjas who wanted to avenge the rock ninjas who died at their hands increased day by day. Everyone, pay attention. Our ninjas sent back information that this side is guarded by a group of Uchiha brats. With our strength, we should be able to easily defeat them, or even strangle them in the cradle. As the leader of this hunting mission, this short but sturdy rock ninja began to cheer up his subordinates when he saw that they were almost there. Normal ninja teams are basically 3 people who come out to perform tasks together. Those with 4 people are labeled as reinforced teams. Of course, there is also a typical master-disciple combination of 1 big and 3 small. However, such teams usually do not appear on the front battlefield. This kind of place is not suitable for these rookies who are still playing the ninja game. Even if their leading jonin are usually elites carefully selected from the village. But with 3 burdens, coming to this cruel Shura field, the end is generally not too good. Either you sacrifice yourself to cover your disciples to break through, or all your disciples are killed, leaving you alone to survive. In the second case, the village has no good solution. At most, it can only send this derelict jonin to the front line and let him fend for himself. And the team he led this time was all the elite team of rock ninja. Hunting a group of little ghosts was not difficult at all. Even if the opponent was the famous Uchiha, it could not change the fact that the opponent was a group of newcomers on the battlefield. Besides, it would be such a pleasant thing to be able to step on these famous children of the big families and listen to their wails full of fear, pain and regret before death. Although he couldn't treat the big families in the same village in this way, he had already thought about torturing all the targets of his mission to death in this place. It would also be a good way to get rid of the humiliation he suffered in the village. While imagining, this square-faced senior ninja, wearing a red base and a khaki-colored rock ninja standard vest, showed a cruel smile that was inconsistent with his appearance. "Oh, kill these little ghosts and avenge our sacrificed companions," a uniform answer echoed at the edge of the forest. From time to time, you can see that some rock ninjas either follow their teammates mechanically with numb expressions, or are excited with red eyes, like beasts about to choose people to eat more than humans. Captain Gang Shan, something is happening as the perception ninja in the team, acting as the eyes of the team. The young man who noticed the abnormality at this time issued his own warning. This Iwagakure, who looked less than 16 years old, had a baby face and a fat Iwagakure uniform that seemed a bit too big for him. "What's wrong, Kinyan?" Is there something wrong in the forest across the street? He stopped his steps and looked at the junior he was quite optimistic about with a questioning look in his eyes. He had noticed the grove a long time ago. As an old jonin who was already 30 years old, he never took his eyes off the grove when he approached here. There was no favorable terrain nearby. Except for this forest, it could hide the traces of these little ghosts very well, so that they could perform some tricks. How could a veteran like him ignore this? Before, the reason why he encouraged his companions before entering the forest was to create momentum to scare the little ghosts that might exist on the opposite side. This can cause some psychological pressure on the opponent. If some flaws can be revealed, it will be even better, such as now. It seems that our target is very cunning. Although they are a group of little ghosts, they also know how to occupy advantageous terrain and advance to ambush. Ha, ha, ha. It seems that the so-called Uchiha bloodline is nothing more than this. While saying this, he gestured to Kinyan, asking him to point out the location of those little ghosts, while letting his companions prepare to launch an attack. The opponent is really immature. Just seeing the arrival of these enemies, coupled with his verbal stimulation, the flaws were exposed, allowing the perception ninja on his side to sense it and advance. This kind of newcomer is his favorite. Unfamiliar, nervous, unable to hide their own thoughts, let him, an experienced ninja, easily see through. At the same time, they also don't realize the cruelty of the ninja profession. They often become angry, out of control, and make many mistakes for some so-called companions, family affection, and fetters. Watching them become helpless, collapse, and cry because they are about to face death, or witness the death of their loved ones. Killing such little ghosts is more enjoyable. The target 14 people are all hiding at the edge of the woods, less than 50 meters away from us. Judging from the chakra reaction, only 2 are at the level of special jonin. Kinyan closed his eyes and concentrated on sensing the situation on the opposite side. While reporting the situation he sensed, his hands did not stop. He took out a large shuriken and shot it in the direction he sensed. 10 chapters will be released today. Chapter 166 Rock Cannon. Perception ninjutsu is an extremely important category in the ninja system. In actual combat, it is extremely important. Generally, it can be divided into chakra perception, spiritual perception, 5 senses perception, and some perception of the enemy's existence through the ninja beasts or secret techniques raised by oneself. However, most of these perception ninjutsu have one characteristic, which is to concentrate one's energy and use the power of chakra to expand this talent. Only in this way can one expand the range of perception to a farther distance and achieve the goal of discovering the opponent one step ahead. When perceiving, generally one must remain still and mobilize the chakra in one's body, so that it is possible to exert one's maximum perception range and accuracy. Otherwise, except for some disturbances around oneself, no one can feel the movement within a large range 24 hours a day. Whether it is Dong Shileng or the rock ninja who is perceiving the abnormal situation, it is the same. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. As the rock ninja named Kinyan marked the suspicious places one by one, the Uchiha hiding in the forest finally revealed their tracks. At this time, they no longer needed to hide. In this case, they might as well show their identities openly. After revealing their identities, these people did not hesitate at all and directly launched a round of medium and long-range attacks on them, including shurikens, kunai, detonating tags, etc. Most of the Uchiha ninjas were only about 12 years old, and the oldest was no more than 15 years old. There were 14 of them in total, which was at a clear disadvantage compared to them. Ha, ha, ha. I didn't expect that among these little ghosts, there were actually 2 ninjas with bloodline limits. This is really great. It seems that I will have 2 more pairs of extremely valuable collections in my collection. Looking at the other party, who was discovered by the perception ninja, and launched an attack on him and others without any hesitation, the heart of the veteran ninja named Gangshan was not disturbed at all. He just lowered his eyelids slightly, not looking at the 2 Uchiha with the Sharingan, and at the same time reminded his companions, "Everyone, be careful, don't look directly into the eyes of the 2 bloody ninjas, and be careful of their illusions." Yes, Gangshan Jonin. While answering his superior's reminder, He hid behind the earth flow wall created by his teammates. Be careful, the opponent's Shuriken technique is also very good. Pay attention to the movements of those kunai with detonating tags. As if recalling something bad, this rock ninja's Jonin, his face became a little gloomy and continued to remind his subordinates. While his hands did not stop moving, he knocked down several kunai that changed direction in the air and shot behind the earth wall. These were all bloody lessons that his companions exchanged for their lives. At that time, when his team first encountered these Uchiha, some of their companions were hiding behind the earth flow wall, so they relaxed their vigilance and were taken away by this unpredictable Shuriken technique, especially the kunai with detonating talismans hanging on the tail rings, which caused great casualties to their team, allowing the opponent to easily gain the upper hand and defeat their team. Fortunately, he was under the cover of his companions, so he had a chance to escape, but his companions at that time, whenever he thought of this, he couldn't help but feel emotional. The second set of combat plans. First consume the opponent's chakra from a distance, and then harvest these little ghosts in close combat. He had just carefully looked at it. The opponent was generally young and his own chakra was definitely insufficient. As long as he dealt with the opponent for a while, those little ghosts would be like naked beauties, allowing him to do whatever he wanted. There was no threat. The only thing to worry about was the two ninjas who had awakened their own bloodline limits, and they needed to pay a little attention. But after their companions died, they would be fish on the chopping board. Earth escape middle. Rock cannon. At this time, a large group of nearly 20 rock ninjas formed seals with their hands at the same time, and spit out stone balls full of earth attribute chakra, which were as big as jujubes. As these small balls were spit out from their mouths, they slowly began to change their properties under the effect of chakra, turning into flying stones the size of millstones, smashing towards the group of Uchiha's little ghosts. This is the conventional attack method of the rock ninja. They use the characteristics of their own earth attribute to create defensive positions that can wrap themselves up, and then use this ninjutsu with low consumption and long attack distance to consume the enemy. With the advantage of the rock cannon ninja technique, they can be said to be walking catapults. Whether it is a solid fortification or an ordinary encounter, they can easily gain an advantage. And this ninjutsu has another feature, that is, the more people there are, the more powerful the momentum will be when this ninjutsu is performed. No matter what kind of mountain stone fortress you are, as long as they are given time, they have the confidence to destroy the opponent's defense. For example, now, a large group of nearly 20 flying stones that are either the size of a millstone or as big as a wheel squeeze the air and make a humming sound, with a momentum of crushing, withering and rotten, spanning a distance of dozens of nearly 100 meters, and smashed over. Be careful, everyone, dodge. If it were just a few flying stones, it would be easier to deal with, but now there are nearly 20 stone bullets flying over, and they don't have any good way. Fire style. Great fireball technique. The leading female ninja gave the order somewhat helplessly. At the same time, she cast a great fireball technique, hoping that this would reduce the speed of those stone bullets and buy time for her companions. These stone bullets are quite troublesome, relying on their own size and the potential energy they carry when flying. Ordinary sea-level fire-style ninjutsu, shuriken and the like have little effect on them. Even the great fireball, due to its own properties and the fact that the chakra is too dispersed, can only slow down their flying speed and cannot destroy them. And casting some powerful fire-style ninjutsu to defend against these attacks is really not worth it. With her chakra, casting 2 or so B-level ninjutsu is already her limit, and wasting it here is really not worth it. In this way, when the head-on battle comes, our side will be in a very unfavorable situation. Chapter 167 Sneak Attack. Among the 5 attributes, the most suitable for large-scale combat, the earth attribute must have a place. These ninjas from the northwest plateau of the ninja world are all big and strong, not tall, but each of them has a strong personality and loves to stick together. Once these rock ninjas form a certain scale, they become quite difficult to deal with, and some characteristics of the earth attribute account for a large part of the reason. They always stand behind the various earth and stone obstacles formed by their own ninjutsu, and launch the rock iron cannon technique in groups of 3 or 5 to attack you remotely. And some of your attacks can be easily blocked by the ninjutsu in front of them. This is not over yet. When you want to approach them, you will also face the swamp area they created, so that you have to be extra careful about your feet when attacking, for fear that you will fall into the yellow spring swamp if you are not careful. Even if you get close to the opponent, there is still a wall of earth flow in front of the opponent that you need to bypass so that you can attack their body. But in this way, when you get behind the earth wall that will block your view, you will face a detonating talisman and 3 big men waiting for you. Even if none of these situations happen, and you successfully start a one-on-one confrontation with the opponent is likely to choose another battlefield when he is at a disadvantage. And this so-called other battlefield is also easy to understand. That is, everyone will stand on the ground above. Rock ninjas like to choose to perform earth escape and stealth in the earth when they can't beat them. At this time, whether you chase or not becomes a very troublesome thing. Without a certain perception ability, you may not be able to find the traces of the enemy hidden deep underground. Even if you find the traces of the opponent, you must be proficient in earth escape ninjutsu. Otherwise, it is hard to say whether you are chasing or sending food when you chase underground. After all, the opponent has the home advantage. In such an environment, you may not be able to defeat the opponent. This is still the case when you still have the upper hand. If the situation is not good, the opponent will use rock fist and earth escape hardening technique to greet you warmly. Don't look at these rock ninjas who are not tall. Their sturdy limbs, coupled with rock fists, you may not be able to withstand a few heavy punches from the opponent. For some large-scale fortifications, although they cannot be destroyed with a flip of the hand, it is still no problem to open some gaps. Learn about earth excavation, mountain earth technique, and earth-shaking core. This has resulted in the relatively strong position of the rock ninja village among the 5 major countries. Even Konoha, which is full of talents, dare not underestimate the rock ninjas. Boom, snap, bang. As the rock iron cannons of these rock ninjas fell, the whole grove became full of noises, and then smoke and dust filled the sky. When the smoke and dust cleared, the grove that was just normal was now riddled with holes. There were splashed stones and broken limbs of trees everywhere on the ground. These are the consequences of the rock cannon just now. Although it did not hit those flexible and changeable enemies this time, these immovable trees and land were in trouble. Except for some giant trees that were hugged by several people, everything else that was hit, branches, trees, and vegetation, became unrecognizable. Even the earth was also made bumpy by these rock cannons, and at the same time, soil and rocks flew everywhere, and from time to time, it would also affect some Uchiha kids who didn't have time to hide far away. Don't stop. Perception ninjas always pay attention to the opponent's movements. Seeing that 1 or 2 unlucky guys were injured by the splashing stones, Gangshan Jonin had no intention of stopping, but continued to order these subordinates to continue attacking. Whereas this, he didn't plan to stop until the opponent consumed half of his chakra. If he was lucky, it would be best if a few unlucky guys who couldn't dodge were hit by these stone bullets. In this way, he would be much more relaxed later. Just behind them, less than 20 meters away, Dong Shiliang, who had no sense of existence, really couldn't wait any longer. If he didn't take action, his companions would not be able to withstand a few rounds of rock cannon bombardment. In fact, each time these rock ninjas attacked, they would cover a large area of dozens or even hundreds of square meters. Even if they couldn't hit his companions directly, some of the stones that splashed out would cause a lot of trouble. Every time these stone bullets drew a parabola and fell down, they always carried a lot of potential energy. If a team leader Yenins didn't use fire escape to slow down these stones, the little ghosts behind them might not be able to dodge them all. But in this way, the stone bullets would naturally carry some traces of high temperature, making the power even higher when splashing. If there were another 7 or 8 rounds like this, it was estimated that the 2 of them would lose most of their combat effectiveness, which would be very disadvantageous for the next close combat. Even those little ghosts who had just been on the battlefield for a short time would consume a lot of physical strength to avoid these attacks. This made Dong Shiliang, who had been ambushing behind the opponent, unable to continue waiting. If I don't stop them, I guess they won't have any chance of winning this big group. With his eyes narrowed, he began to determine the positions of these rock ninjas one by one with the corner of his eyes. At the same time, the three black magatama in his eyes began to slowly rotate around his pupils. He slowly formed a few seals with his hands, then puffed up his chest high, and after slightly accumulating strength, he spit out the high concentration chakra that had been accumulated in his mouth. Fire style, Phoenix Flower Flame Bomb. As Dong Shilang completed this ninjutsu, a large ball of high concentration chakra turned into a basketball-sized fireball in front of him. Then, it suddenly exploded and turned into about 30 orange-red fireballs as big as ping-pong balls, which flew at high speed towards the target he had locked on in advance. At this time, those rock ninjas were facing away from Dong Shilang, and they were almost unprepared. The reason why Dong Shilang only used the corner of his eyes to lock on those rock ninjas was because he was afraid that the other party would find any clues. The experienced people on the battlefield would be suspicious if anything went wrong. Chapter 168 Impatience Flame Bomb. Fire style, Phoenix Flower Flame Bomb. As the seal in his hand was completed, a large ball of highly concentrated chakra fireballs, it rotated and compressed in front of Tawashiru, and then turned into ping-pong-sized flame bombs, flying behind the backs of those rock ninjas. This is a fire-style ninjutsu that he developed after so many years of study. It was inspired by the continuous fire bombs that Naruto fired after he went berserk when pain invaded Konoha in the original work. Of course, he couldn't fire dozens or hundreds of these highly compressed fire attribute chakra bombs at once like Naruto wearing the tailed beast coat. It was even more impossible to use this trick continuously to carry out saturation attacks on the enemy. This ninjutsu was developed by him based on the fire-style ninjutsu of the Uchiha family, Phoenix Flower technique, and combined with the principle of the 4th generation Rasengan, to develop a very practical offensive ninjutsu. It has the characteristics of the original Meixiang fire ninjutsu, which is large in number and controllable in attack trajectory. It has made great progress in attack speed and power. The original Meixiang fire jutsu can only control football-sized fireballs to attack the enemy in a painless way, forcing the opponent to move or restricting the opponent's movement trajectory. But now, the principles copied from the Rasengan have increased the volume of these fireballs after some rotation and compression, and their power has reached a higher level. Of course, considering the difficulty of combining fire attribute chakra and Rasengan, and the balance of the consumption of the technique, he also made some trade-offs. There is no way to perfectly integrate the change of properties and the change of form, which is too difficult. However, when this technique hits the target, it can still cause a small-scale explosion because of the highly concentrated and rotating fire attribute chakra, and form fireballs of 2 or 3 meters square. At the same time, this ninjutsu, because of these smaller and constantly rotating flame bombs, the speed becomes faster and the trajectory is difficult to avoid. Be careful. There's a sneak attack from behind. Just as Dong Shilang began to mobilize his chakra and prepare to perform ninjutsu, Kinyan, a perceptive ninja who had not participated in the battle at the request of his captain, was vigilantly observing the movements around him. He immediately discovered the abnormality behind him. He had no time to wonder why there was someone behind him. His face changed drastically and he was anxious, warning his teammates. Dodge, his superior, the experienced Gangshan Jonin, had already noticed it when he issued the warning. He relied on his intuition that he had struggled on the edge of life and death for so many years. Experienced and old Jonin like them have extremely sharp fighting senses. It is extremely difficult to make them fall into the trap by just relying on some simple sneak attacks, for example. Now, but when he turned his head to observe, it was too late. Looking at the numerous fire bombs that were as beautiful as the fruits of impatience, he felt the crisis contained in them. He had no time to perform ninjutsu, so he could only shout out these 2 syllables at the top of his lungs. Don Shiro, who had just launched a round of attacks, did not stop his actions. Instead, he reached out from his ninja bag, took out 8 kunai, held 4 in each hand, and threw them at the opponent. He did not aim too accurately, because time was limited at this time. He did not stop his actions at all, but formed several seals smoothly, and at the same time, his own chakra burst out. As his seals were completed, his own chakra burst out, and the kunai he threw out turned from 8 to 16, and from 16 to 32. Finally, it turned into a round of kunai rain, with cold murderous intent, like a ruthless rainstorm, overturning these rock ninjas who were still avoiding the balsam flower bombs. Ninjutsu, Shrike Shadow Clone Technique. At this time, Toshiro uttered the name of this ninjutsu lightly. It was this ninjutsu developed by the third generation based on the principle of the Shadow Clone Technique. Although he had no way to use this ninjutsu like Minato Namikaze, and use it to the effect of an S-level ninjutsu, he could still cause a wave of AO damage to these rock ninjas at this time. At the same time, he loved the one-wave flow, so he did not stop his actions at this time. He still understood the simple truth of taking advantage of your weakness. If he didn't take this opportunity to hit the fallen dog, he would have to wait until the opponent regrouped before fighting him head-on. In his eyes, a scarlet light flashed, and Toshiro locked onto the figures of some enemies through his Sharingan. His expression was stern and without any mercy, and he continued to make seals with his hands. Fire style, Dragon Flame Song Technique. Roar. With the sound of the dragon roar, 5 powerful flame dragon heads flew towards the rock ninjas who were still avoiding Toshiro's first 2 waves of attacks. At the same time, when performing the ninjutsu, Toshiro did not stay in place, but jumped up into the air. There are many reasons for doing this. One is to give the Dragon Flame Song Technique a larger space to perform. As for the other reason, it is because he just felt a trace of discordant breath, which was approaching him rapidly from underground. Sure enough, just when he jumped into the air, a thick arm just broke out of the ground and grabbed the afterimage left by Dong Shilang. Just by looking at the knotted muscles on the arm and the bulging blue veins on it, you can know how terrifying the power of the owner of this arm is. If he did not dodge in advance and continued to perform ninjutsu in the same place, the result would not be so good. At this time, the rock ninja who was avoiding Dong Shilang's balsam flower firebomb and the subsequent kunai rainstorm was facing the Dragon Flame Song Technique. Their situation was undoubtedly adding fuel to the fire. Boom, boom, boom. A series of explosions were heard from them, and at the same time, there were also balls of orange flames, enveloping those rock ninjas who had no time to dodge. Although most of the rock ninjas, under the reminders of their superiors and the perception ninjas, successfully avoided the first wave of attacks by Toshiro, there were always 5 or 6 rock ninjas who were inexperienced and made mistakes in a hurry. After enduring a wave of not very powerful explosions, they were engulfed by the subsequent flames. They let out a desperate and painful roar before their death. Chapter 169 Success. Ah, Captain, save me. Captain Gangshan. At this time, Gangshan Jonin, listening to the screams of his teammates before they died, even though he was used to seeing life and death, his eyes began to twitch involuntarily. He did not expect that a hunt that he thought he had won would turn out like this in an instant. Although the opponent's attacks did not have much impact on him, it was not so easy to resolve for the Chunin. Even though he tried his best to block these fire bombs, several of his subordinates were killed, and many were injured. Some of them were seriously injured. But before he could pay more attention to the situation of his subordinates, the opponent's next round of attacks had already followed. And from the corner of his eye, he saw that the opponent was still making seals at this time, and it seemed that he was preparing for the third round of attacks. Damn, this sneak attack guy is really one ring after another, not giving me any chance to breathe before this sturdy rock ninja Jonin could think of a way to deal with the attack. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A huge mass of kunai completely covered the area where they were, and shot towards the rock ninjas who were not stable because of avoiding the fire bombs. If there was no miracle, these Jonins might be fine. But these Chunins with limited strength would suffer heavy casualties again in this wave of attacks. Earth escape middle. Multiple earth flow wall. He gritted his teeth. At this critical moment, this simple ninjutsu with more convenient seals played a significant role. And he couldn't just cast an earth wall, otherwise, there were too many of them to effectively block the attack. Most of the incoming kunai were blocked. This made the Jonin who led the team breathe a sigh of relief. Next, Facing the opponent's unknown ninjutsu, he had no good way to deal with it in a short time. The opponent's sneak attack was too sudden. Moreover, the three waves of attacks were connected very smoothly, as if they had been rehearsed countless times, and they were completed in just 3 to 5 seconds. As a result, after blocking some of the attacks, he had no way to use a more powerful defensive ninjutsu. And the opponent was also quite alert. Even the special Jonin, who had the fastest reaction and speed in his team, successfully dodged the counterattack launched from underground. HMPH. A painful groan came into his ears, making Gangshan Jonin, who was in a bad mood at this time, even more irritated. Those who made the groan were the guys who were far away from him when dodging the firebomb attack just now. Although he urgently cast a multiple earth flow wall, he had no way to cover all his companions within the range of the defensive ninjutsu. Most of these guys had different numbers of kunai stuck in their bodies at this time, and there were 2 unlucky guys who were already lying in a pool of blood. It seemed that in the next battle, not causing trouble was the limit they could do. Before he could catch his breath, a series of deafening dragon roars came into his eardrums at this time. Disperse, don't gather together. Feeling the heat wave that could be felt through the earth wall, Gangshan Jonin continued to yell at his subordinates. Just by feeling, he knew that the earth wall he hastily cast and arranged in a straight line could not stop the attacker's last round of attacks. Crack, crack, boom. When his voice just fell, the earth wall that had just blocked the kunai attack could not withstand the impact of the opponent's ninjutsu and shattered. And right in front of him, there was a dragon-headed chakra flame with a volume of 6 or 7 meters, swooping towards his position. At the same time, it interrupted the ninjutsu in his hand that was halfway through the seal. Damn it! Facing this high-level fire escape ninjutsu, he had no confidence that he could block it with just the hardening technique. Not to mention, this hardening technique was cast rather hastily and could not cover too many parts of the body. Boom boom as the flame dragon head broke through the obstacle and came into close contact with the ground, only a huge charred pit was left on the spot where the figure of Gangshan Jonin was still. And those Chunin who lost the protection of the Jonin and had not yet recovered from the sudden attack, all ended up in a bad way. You know, the dragon flame song technique can be divided into 3 to 5 dragon heads according to the needs of the caster and the amount of chakra, and attack different targets respectively. When Dong Shilang performed the ninjutsu, in order to achieve a better surprise attack effect. But he was not stingy at all and divided 5 dragon heads, even his own tendons and veins, because too much chakra passed through them in a short time, had a faint feeling of being burst. You know, chakra runs from the lower abdomen to the mouth and is then spit out. The total amount at a time is limited, and there will be a lot of differences due to the strength of each tendon. He can be said to have risked his life this time. At this time, the Gangshan Jonin who was able to react and block this fire escape ninjutsu among the rock ninjas had no chance to save them again. The rest depended on whether the remaining 2 special Jonins could help them escape. Groan, boom, ah. A series of sounds representing different meanings came from the middle of the rock ninjas. This was the result of the other 4 leaders who attacked the rock ninjas. Without the Jonins to block them, even these special Jonins had no good way to deal with it in a hurry. They just cast a soil flow wall respectively, hoping to temporarily delay the pace of Dong Shilang's attack. It created a chance for themselves and their companions behind them to escape, but it did not play a decisive role. Only the sea-level soil flow wall did not have much effect against the high-level fire escape ninjutsu cast by Dong Shilang, unless each of them changed the nature of the earth attribute and practiced it to a very advanced level. Along with the shaking of the ground and the screams of the rock ninja, a large cloud of smoke mixed with fire and the smell of burning began to spread on the grass outside the grove. Without counting carefully, you can know that Dong Shilang's long-planned sneak attack has achieved quite good results, causing the rock ninja to suffer heavy losses. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 170 Advantages. Trample. With the friction between the soles of his shoes and the ground, Dong Shilang, who had just dodged a sneak attack by the rock ninja, landed steadily on the ground. Looking at the miserable scene in front of him, Dong Shilang felt some emotions that the ninjas of this era did not have. This twisted ninja world has a huge impact on him. He had never killed a chicken before, but now he can send a large number of lives to the land of death without any waves. Killing a dozen lives at a time was an unimaginable horror legend in his previous life. It only existed in those news reports that were only heard of but not seen. Now, it doesn't have much impact on him or can really turn a normal human into a beast without the slightest mercy. Just like myself in my previous life, I could never imagine it. One day, I will become what I am today. Looking at the rock ninja who appeared from where he was just now, he didn't have anything to worry about. He couldn't let himself think about it at this time. If he didn't kill the other party, he would be the one to die. Feeling the little chakra left in his body, Dong Shilang slowly pulled out the ninja sword on his waist. Since his own small sword was lost in the ambush of Meixiang, he brought the last ancestral ninja sword left by his father with him. After a short period of adaptation, he can now use this chakra weapon with a length of more than 1 meter very well. Go to hell. Without further communication with Dong Shilang, this short-statured rock ninja, who was more like a tree stump than a ninja, waved the weapon in his hand and killed Dong Shilang. The opponent killed half of his teammates at once. At this time, there was no need to talk nonsense. The only conversation between them was the weapons in their hands. With the advantage of the Sharingan, Dong Shilang easily blocked the opponent's attack, but at this time, his physical strength was really overconsumed, and he couldn't organize any big counterattacks. He could only slowly deal with the opponent, hoping that he could slowly recover under the cover of his companions, or his Sharingan could play a certain role, allowing him to defeat the opponent without consuming a lot of chakra. The 3 rounds of attacks just now, although the effect was outstanding, the chakra consumed was quite high. Whether it was the fire style, Phoenix Flower Bomb developed by himself, or the Shuriken Shadow Clone technique developed by the 3rd generation, or the last fire style, Dragon Flame Song technique, each ninjutsu was above level B, and using 3 high-level ninjutsu in one breath almost consumed all the chakra in his body. Even his own body was a little bit overwhelmed. It was not that his own strength was only at this level, the key was that he did it too hard at once, which made him feel that his body was hollowed out and very weak. As long as he is given a little buffer time, he can basically recover his combat power. At this time, the Uchiha boys who had been passively beaten, led by Uchiha Yenins, finally arrived at the scene. They surrounded the frightened rock ninjas. At this time, compared with the beginning of the group, a large number of rock ninjas attacked a group of young Uchiha kids, which had undergone a fundamental change. They became a group of kids, besieging the remaining rock ninjas. Be careful. The leader of the other team has hidden himself. Don't make a move. Be alert to the opponent's sneak attack. Let's lead these tribesmen to besiege them. Dong Shilang couldn't help but be cautious. The characteristics of the ninja's high attack and fragile skin determined that as long as there was an effective sneak attack, it could play a decisive role in the group battle. Just like what he did just now, he spent a lot of effort to have the advantage now. What if the hiding ninja imitated and launched a sneak attack? Wouldn't it be a waste of time? The opponent did not suffer any damage in the attack just now, and the amount of chakra consumed was almost negligible. If you are not careful, it will become a joke if the opponent turns the tables. Yes, I know, you should be careful too. The opponent must be eyeing you now. Uchiha Yen, who has grown into a graceful young lady, did not act pretentiously, but reminded Dong Shilang to be careful. Then he stared at his pair of Magatama Sharingan and stared closely at the slightest movement in the field. Of course, he knew what Yan reminded him. He gave the opponent such a big surprise. This senior ninja of the rock village was afraid that he would want to grind him to ashes. How could he not be alert? As for whether doing so would cause casualties to his fellow tribesmen, he also thought it over carefully. If he was alone, the number of people he could protect was limited, and he could not take care of every tribesman behind him. Instead of doing this, it is better to let them get some proper training. Even if some of his friends who he knows are unfortunately killed, he can't do anything. He is not a saint. He doesn't have such feelings. In addition, his strength does not allow it. If these friends of his still have casualties in the end under such an advantageous situation, he will accept it. After all, he can help them once or twice, and can he protect them every time? If they want to survive this long-lasting war, they can only rely on themselves in the end. There is one more thing. That is the Sharingan. Knowing the nature of his own bloodline limit, it is not a bad thing to let these tribesmen experience some danger. Otherwise, if they have been living under the protection of others, it is estimated that the chance of them opening their eyes will be greatly reduced. The opening of each pair of Sharingan is always accompanied by blood and tears. This makes every tribe member who opens his eyes love and hate his own bloodline. Although not everyone has to experience the death of a companion or someone they care about, but negative emotions such as injury, powerlessness, regret, and despair are always indispensable. Moreover, the more intensely these negative emotions erupt, the greater the chance of opening the eyes. Therefore, the more tragic, desperate and fighting the Uchiha family members experience, the more shocking their potential will be. 5 more chapters will be posted in the evening. Chapter 171 Eyes of Stone. Block the enemy's attack at will. Dong Shilang was really not in a hurry at this time, just like what the rock ninja Jonin named Gang Shan thought at the beginning. At this time, he only needed to wait for his companions to kill the Chunin who had just escaped from his hands. Next, no matter whether it was his current opponent or the hidden rock ninja Jonin, they were all fish on the chopping board. There was no other choice except to escape. A beast without claws and fangs, no matter how strong he was before, facing the hunter's siege, can only usher in a tragic end. In a place that the two sides fighting in the field did not notice, a round black-brown stone ball was lying quietly on the grass at this time. It was not big in size, just slightly larger than the eyeball of a normal adult. Through the grass blocking him, he was observing the battle situation in the field. This was the Gangshan Jonin hiding underground, performing a reconnaissance ninjutsu, the principle of which was somewhat similar to the Sandai in the original work. In order not to be discovered by the Sharingan, it did not dare to expose its tracks and could only hide in the dark and peek. This is trouble. After taking a look at the situation in the field, Gangshan Jonin's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. However, at this time, he was hiding underground. There was no light around him, and his expression could not be revealed. The reason why he said this was because of the current situation in the field. Although he reacted quickly when the attack came, he only blocked the second wave of attacks. At the beginning, facing those fire bombs with amazing speed, he could only protect himself and help several companions around him to block the attacks. When it came to the third wave of attacks, he could only hide underground to keep himself safe. The opponent's offensive was too coherent. Not only that, but it was also very targeted. For him, the leader of the team, he was very caring. He was the first to be attacked. If he hadn't reacted immediately, the situation would probably not be much better at this time. From the beginning of the sneak attack, their fate was basically doomed, unless he was willing to sacrifice his life and block these attacks at all costs. At this time, they were completely in a passive situation. Although none of their 3 special Jonins died, they were more or less injured to varying degrees. In addition, one of them was a perception ninja, and his real combat power was only equivalent to that of an elite Chunin. After the opponent's sneak attacker and another Sharingan ninja each held back 2 high-end combat forces on their side, the opponent still had a pair of Sharingan left. He was staring closely at the changes in the field, always preventing his sneak attacks. He was not sure that he could kill a Sharingan ninja in a short time, even if the opponent did not look very old. At this time, the Chunin combat power on his side was at an absolute disadvantage in numbers. Compared to the nearly 4 combat teams of the opponent, they only had 6 Chunin combat forces, which was a world of difference from the beginning. Everyone had to deal with 2 enemies. This could not last long. What was even more troublesome was that many of them were injured to varying degrees. Burns of varying sizes, as well as wounds caused by kunai, were all consuming their mental and physical strength. The stone eye slowly turned and looked at the initial attacker, carefully observing his every move. It seemed that the only way to break through this battle could be found from this side. Ding! After blocking the opponent again, facing the stone stick that swept across his waist, Dong Shilang felt his right arm that was numb from the shock, and couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. He was quite helpless against the opponent's desperate fighting style. After the opponent showed up, he directly condensed a dark stone stick with a length of nearly 2 meters and the thickness of a goose egg from the ground under his feet, and launched a fierce attack on him. Just by visual inspection, he knew that this weapon was not light, and it would stir the air nearby when it was swung. When it collided with his ninja sword, the sound was not right. Rather than saying it was a stone stick, he would rather believe that it was an iron rod. Every attack was powerful and heavy. The opponent, relying on the advantage of his long weapon, made him a little embarrassed. Whenever he could not avoid it, after fighting with the opponent, he could really feel the opponent's killing intention. It was a completely desperate fighting style, not giving him any chance to breathe. At the same time, the opponent was also very cautious, and never had any collision with his line of sight. Do you think it's okay just to defend the Sharingan? Dong Shilang, who had gathered some strength, was not going to delay any longer. Magic Naraku sighting technique. After being repelled by the opponent again and again, Dong Shilang took advantage of the gap in retreating to seal with his left hand and cast this illusion that was not exclusive to the Sharingan. As the grandson of Uchiha Jiji and a time traveler, his mental energy is quite outstanding. It would be a pity if he only studied the Sharingan illusion. Hirako. Just after Toshiro finished the seal, this short but strong rock ninja roared out, unable to control his emotions. At the same time, he tightly grasped the stone stick in his hand and swung it towards the air around him. He turned a blind eye to the enemies around him. How could it be? How could Hirako appear here? Hasn't she been killed by Konoha's ninja? Looking at his teammates who were surrounded, the rock ninja didn't react for a moment. If he remembered correctly, the other party had died at the hands of Konoha's ninja not long ago. How could she appear in front of him at this time? Oh no. As expected of the elite of the rock ninja, this special jonin who had caused Toshiro a lot of trouble had already reacted at this time after a slight distraction, knowing that he had been caught in an illusion. Remove. He didn't dare to delay for a moment, and immediately pointed his sword with one hand, trying to disrupt the flow of his chakra to remove the illusion. Although he was happy to see Hirako again, he did not forget that he was still fighting a ninja from Konoha. He could only hope that he could avenge Hirako and reduce the regret in his heart. Chapter 172 Earth Bamboo Shoots. Unlike the slow progress of Yang escape, Dong Shilang has made rapid progress in Yin escape over the years, and his ability in illusion has also improved. Not only his family's Sharingan illusion, but also some 5-sense illusions. He has a good attainment, especially the 3 illusions of vision, hearing, and touch, which are his main research objects. Visual illusion is easy to say. It has a slight connection with the Sharingan, and his family has a collection. Auditory and tactile illusions are relatively rare. Thanks to his Uchiha identity and the blessing of Mr. Shigemasa, he found some information from the family collection. As for olfactory and taste illusions, even the Uchiha clan, which has a rich family collection, had no information to learn. There are only some simple introductions. It can only be said that these 2 illusions are too rare. In the whole Konoha, it is estimated that only the Kurama clan will have some related collections. However, he is not sure whether these collected illusions have practical value. Compared with illusions that can be directly applied in actual combat, the sense of smell and taste are more suitable for use under prepared conditions. This has led to their inheritance being intermittent and not very stable. At the same time, the shackles of the application method have also made the already rare illusion ninjas lack interest in learning these 2 illusions. Swish. A snow-white knife light, starting from Dong Shilang, pointed directly at the vital point of the rock ninja. Seeing that his opponent was trapped in his illusion, Dong Shilang, who had just distanced himself from the opponent, directly performed the instant body technique and prepared to complete the final harvest. Click, click. At this time, a sound of soil and stone friction came into his ears. Dong Shilang, who had just come to the front of the rock ninja who tried to remove the illusion himself, changed his face. He even shouted in his heart, "Here it comes!" Although he was prepared for the Gangshan Jonin to choose himself as a breakthrough point. After all, with his current state and the trouble he had just caused to the opponent is likely to find him. But he didn't expect that the other party would choose to launch an attack at this time, and the timing was so accurate. It was the time when he was performing the instant body technique and preparing to harvest this special Jonin. He just launched the instant body technique, and the whole person was in a straight line, and he was moving towards the opponent's position. And the Gangshan Jonin could actually use a earth escape barrier at this time to block the rock ninja. If the operation is not good, the flash and hit the wall will happen to him again. As for why it is again, this happened from time to time during his previous life's game, but in this ninja world, if he really experienced it once, he couldn't bear it. With the speed of the instant body technique, if it was interrupted and hit the wall in the middle, it would not be like the previous life game. It would only be possible to lose a chance to escape, or drag down the victory or defeat of a team battle. In the ninja world, if there is no defense, the instant body hitting the wall is no less than hitting a heavy truck driving at high speed. Or he bumped into it himself. The end was not pretty. He was indeed a veteran Jonin, with rich experience. He made Toshiro feel very uncomfortable with his first move. The timing was really perfect. Fortunately, Toshiro was not completely unprepared. When he attacked, he did not use his fastest speed. At the same time, through the high-definition perspective of the Sharingan, he also found that he was abnormal on his way forward. In addition to his hard training over the years, and the results of his physical activation, he just stretched out his free left hand, gently used the edge of the obstacle to slightly borrow force, turned 360 degrees, and flew over the obstacle. Although he successfully avoided the opponent's attack, Toshiro did not dare to take it lightly. How could the attack of a Jonin be limited to this extent? Sure enough, before landing, Toshiro in the air saw the change of his foothold through his Sharingan. Swish, swish, swish. He threw 3 shurikens in succession, shooting them not far from him. Then, with the force of his wrist, his figure shifted 10 meters in the direction of the shurikens. From the faintly visible silk threads connecting the shurikens in the air, it can be judged that he just relied on these silk threads to successfully avoid the opponent's attack again. At the same time, in order to strengthen the connection between the shurikens and the soil on the grass, he also passed a trace of chakra through the special silk thread in his hand. This allowed the shurikens to hold the ground more firmly and prevent themselves from losing their anchor points in the middle of drifting. Not good. Before he actually landed, a sense of danger struck his heart, making him feel like a thorn in his back. Looking down, he saw that at his feet, there were 4 dark brown, hard and slender protrusions like bamboo shoots. They were growing rapidly. If he couldn't change the trajectory of landing again, his end would be quite miserable. But at this time, he had already changed his foothold once through the shuriken and the special steel wire. It was too late to change the direction again. I didn't expect that the other party would also set up an ambush in this place. Looking at those things that were slowly growing in the field of vision of the Sharingan, he knew that the growth rate of those spikes only seemed slow in the field of vision of the Sharingan, and in reality, their growth rate was extremely fast. If he fell to the ground like this, he would definitely be pierced into a blood gourd. The ninjutsu performed by the opponent was also a simple sea-level ninjutsu, Earth Escape Middle. Earth Stone Shoots. The function of this ninjutsu is to grow 4 earth and stone spikes on the ground that look like bamboo shoots that have just broken through the ground. These slender spikes will pierce the enemy who falls into the center of the ninjutsu from the front, back, left, and right, 4 directions, using their hard iron spikes to pierce the opponent's waist. It is really vicious. Clang. 4 rapidly growing earth stalagmites finished growing just as Dong Shilang landed. The 4 earth stalagmites that grew from different directions toward the center came together, making a trembling sound after the collision of metal weapons. The so-called bamboo shoots generally refer to the tender shoots of bamboo. At the same time, it can also refer to the delicate hands of women, and it is also a synonym for the horizontal bar used to hang musical instruments such as bells, chimes, and bells in ancient times. Chapter 173 Gangshan. At this time, Someone who noticed that Toshiro was in a bad situation was Uchiha Hamura, who was watching the battlefield situation from a distance to prevent the opponent from attacking her. However, the situation on their side became unfavorable to Toshiro in the blink of an eye. Even if she wanted to rescue him, she couldn't get there in a short time. She could only watch Toshiro fall into the opponent's trap. His lovely little face turned pale because of the sudden change in the battle situation. Even the Sharingan in her eye sockets, because of her nervousness, the two Magatama in it began to rotate slowly. On the one hand, she was worried about the safety of her teammates, and on the other hand, she was worried about the battle in the field. She knew that once the situation on Toshiro's side changed, the opponent would immediately free up a Jonin and a special Jonin. On her side, except for herself, there was no extra strength to fight against the opponent. Those companions who didn't open their eyes would only hold them back. Fortunately, the worst situation did not happen, and Toshiro successfully avoided the opponent's attack. The three-tipped Sharingan that almost frightened her just now slowly calmed down. At this time, Dong Shilang was standing in a strange posture of a golden rooster standing on one leg, with one foot on the handle of the ninja sword in his hand, and his whole body was standing straight. The ninja sword in his hand was inserted straight into the ground, and the whole person's weight was supported by this thin ninja sword. That was close. Looking at the sharp edge so close, Dong Shilang couldn't help but sweat on his forehead. It was too dangerous just now. If he hadn't used the gap of this ninjutsu, using the ninja sword in his hand as a support to bear the weight of his whole body, he would have lost his life after landing just now. Even so, the pants near his calves were still torn by the sharp thorns of the earth's stalagmites. Through these holes, you can vaguely see that some blood will ooze out from the surface of his own skin from time to time. At this time, Dong Shilang was extremely grateful that he was an Uchiha. If it weren't for the vision of the Sharingan, he wouldn't have been able to catch the loophole of this ninjutsu so quickly, and he would have been able to successfully escape this crisis with only a little skin scratch. Just as he was about to correct his current position, a rumbling sound like a dragon turning over came. Then the whole ground began to tremble slightly. What is this? Looking at the changes in front of him, he didn't dare to hesitate for a moment, and quickly landed on the ground, ready to deal with the opponent's next round of attacks. But before he could stand firm, the opponent's offensive followed one after another, and the momentum was also quite extraordinary, as if he would never stop until he was killed. Retribution is really not good. Facing the opponent's endless offensive, Dong Shilang didn't know how to describe his current mood for a moment. When he sneaked up on the opponent just now, the offensive was also like this, one ring after another without interruption. Unexpectedly, in a blink of an eye, the offensive launched by the opponent against him was similar in nature. He started to run around in a hurry. Roar! Before he could calm down, two huge monsters appeared on the ground and attacked him. Looking at the two earth and stone creatures covered with a lot of weeds and vines, he didn't say anything and turned around and ran away without saying a word. The ninjutsu that the other party was using was beyond his tolerance. If he was in good condition now, he could still resist these two things, but now looking at these two dragon-shaped monsters that poked out half of their bodies, more than 30 meters long and 3 or 4 meters thick, and swam in the mud under him like mud, he could only avoid their sharp edges. Who made him lack mana now? There was nothing he could do but run away quickly. It turned out that at this time, the rock ninja Gangshan, who was hiding underground, performed an A-level earth escape double earth and stone dragon. The earth and stone dragon technique was originally a B-level earth escape ninjutsu. Its function was to create a giant earth and stone dragon with earth attribute from the earth and attack the enemy on the ground. With the heavy earth attribute, few defensive ninjutsu can block this move. It can also attribute the land in front of you, allowing you to swim on the ground like taking a bath. It has a very strong destructive power. Not to mention that this ninjutsu was specially strengthened by Gangshan Jonin. The general earth and stone dragon, when used, is not so large, and can only create one earth and stone dragon to attack the enemy at a time. And now there are two chasing behind Dong Shilang to say that this Gangshan Jonin has good qualifications. He barely touched the threshold of elite Jonin, although he has reached this level at the age of about 30. but it is undeniable that he has his own talent and hard work. Compared with Konoha, where the master-apprentice system is relatively complete, Iwagakure village is not good enough in this regard. In addition, Iwagakure village is relatively conservative. As a result, he has not obtained any advanced secret techniques for so many years, and can only focus all his energy on these not very advanced conventional ninjutsu. Of course, this is also inseparable from the exclusion of those ninja families. The rock ninja is famous for its unity, but this unity also brings a not very good consequence. Those united rock ninja high-level people will inevitably suppress them, who are born civilians, intentionally or unintentionally for the benefit of their own families. For example, Gangshan, whether he was promoted to a jonin or wanted to exchange some high-level secret techniques after he made meritorious contributions, he encountered a lot of difficulties. It was okay when he was promoted to a jonin, it was just delayed for 2 years. Although he was unhappy, he did not suffer any substantial losses. However, when exchanging the secret techniques he was optimistic about, these high-level people would shirk all kinds of things, and always find all kinds of inexplicable excuses to reject his application, which made him hate these family ninjas and helpless at the same time. He couldn't kill the high-level people of these villages in a rage. He didn't mind, but since he had a family, he couldn't. To be honest, this kind of thing is inevitable no matter where you are. Even in Konoha, isn't there a conflict between civilians and family ninjas? Not to mention the rock ninja. Chapter 174 Earth and Stone Dragon. This is really violent. Looking back, Dong Shilang saw the Earth and Stone Dragon rushing towards him with great momentum. He couldn't help sweating on his forehead and his throat was dry. He swallowed his saliva. It seemed that this rock ninja's jonin really hated him to the bone. When he got angry, every move was fatal, not giving him any chance of luck. He's going to kill me. He just turned around and hadn't escaped far. He couldn't help but sigh as soon as he raised his eyes. It was really a case of misfortunes never come singly. At this time, at the critical moment of his escape, a short and strong figure was standing in front of him. His right arm was half bare, and he was tightly holding the black-brown stone stick of amazing weight in his hand, squinting his eyes and waiting for his arrival, thanks to the blocking of the Gangshan Jonin. At this time, the opponent had already broken free from the Naraku Kenjutsu that Dong Shilang had just performed, and was secretly accumulating strength, ready to launch an attack on him again, a posture of waiting for the rabbit. The two earth and stone dragons opposite him formed an angle, trapping Dong Shilang. If he fails, he will die here. Looking at the deadly scene in front of him, Dong Shilang, who was trying to escape, could only grit his teeth and take a risk. He formed a seal with one hand. Then, 7 or 8 Dong Shilang figures appeared beside him, hiding his real body among them, and began to prepare to break out from the left, right and top of the opponent. At the same time, his hands kept moving, and a large number of shuriken were thrown towards the opponent's position. He hoped that this would slightly distract the opponent's attention, so that this special ninja would not have time to carefully distinguish these clones. That's right, what he just performed was the clone technique of the 3 body techniques taught in the ninja school, which was just an illusion transformed by a ball of chakra. A special ninja only needs to distinguish it a little, and this ninjutsu is unlikely to deceive the opponent. This is why Dong Shilang also added a wave of shuriken attacks. He is in a critical situation at this time. If he wanted to dodge the ninjutsu behind him and the attack of the special jonin on the opposite side, it would be fine if he was in his prime, but at this moment when his legs were a little weak, he could only resort to this last resort. I hope I can pass it off. Ding, ding, ding. As expected, the shuriken fired by Dong Shilang was easily blocked by the stone stick in the opponent's hand. Looking at the opponent's free control, it was as if the weapon in his hand was just a wooden stick. Fortunately, after his round of shuriken interruption, the opponent was too late to carefully distinguish his clone technique. Dong Shilang mixed in with his clones and passed by the opponent, leaving only 2 clones, which were defeated by the opponent into white smoke. It should be said that Dong Shilang's response was still quite reliable. Moreover, the 3-body technique is worthy of being the basic ninjutsu emphasized by the ninja school. Not only does it have the advantages of short seal time and low consumption, but in such an emergency, This simple and practical ninjutsu has to be relied on to save the day. But before he could come back to his senses from the joy of escaping death, Dong Shilang's face became a little ugly. Just 10 meters away from the opponent's attack range, Dong Shilang stopped and stood there without moving. At the same time, the Sharingan in his eyes began to scan around. At the same time, he did not continue to flee. Damn, this rock ninja Jonin is really deadly when he doesn't attack, and he forced me to breathe. It's not that he doesn't want to escape now, but the current situation does not allow it. Just in front of him, in the side of the Sharingan, a large area of chakra almost covered all his escape routes. He threw a shuriken to test it. I saw that this shuriken, which weighed less than 1 or 2 pounds, quickly sank from the ground in front of him, without even a bubble. No wonder, this special Jonin who just blocked his way, didn't look frustrated about his successful escape. At first, Dong Shilang thought that the opponent was too late to react, or that the illusion just now had some residual effects on the opponent, so there was no change in his expression. Now it seems that he has already known the changes here and is waiting for him. He was secretly proud of his response just now. Now it seems that all this was planned by the opponent. It turned out that the large semicircular ground in front of Dong Shilang had been tampered with by the rock ninja Jonin Gangshan, who was still hiding underground. Just from the reaction of the shuriken that was just thrown on the land, it can be judged that the opponent performed a very practical and high-level ninjutsu. Earth Escape Middle. Yellow Spring Swamp is a very important ninjutsu in Earth Escape. Once this ninjutsu is performed, it can turn a large piece of land into a deadly trap with hidden murderous intentions. On the surface, these swamps transformed by Earth Escape are no different from ordinary land and maintain the calmness before the spell. However, the soil that has undergone the change of earth attribute has become as soft as a swamp, making it difficult for enemies who step into this swamp to break free. At the same time, in order to strengthen the binding of the swamp, some individual ninjas will add some special functions to these soft soils. That is, those enemies who try to break free will be firmly stuck in this swamp, so that their opponents can only struggle in vain, and then watch themselves slowly sinking little by little, and finally suffocate to death. If it weren't for Dong Shilang's Sharingan that can see chakra, he would have discovered the wrong thing in front of him in advance. With the heart that just escaped by luck, he stepped into this trap carefully prepared by the opponent without checking, and his end would be miserable. It's really dangerous. Dong Shilang secretly wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and sighed. These old foxes are really more insidious than one another. Fighting with such people, if you are not careful, you probably don't know how you died. But now, the situation he has to face has become a little difficult to deal with. Looking back, I saw the rock ninja who had completely blocked my way, and the 2 earth and stone dragons that rushed towards me without any hesitation. It seemed that the other party had no intention of communicating with me. That's right, I killed so many of their companions, and there was no need for any communication between them and me. It was either you or I. Chapter 175 Trump Card. TSK. Looking at the crisis he was facing, Dong Shilang couldn't help but complain. The other party really thought highly of him and was willing to spend a lot of money. With the attack rhythm prepared by the other party, even if an elite Jonin came, he would probably not be able to get any good results in his current state. Indeed, Gangshan Jonin's long-planned offensive can be said to have forced Dong Shilang into a desperate situation. Use the large-scale Yellow Spring Swamp to limit Dong Shilang's range of action, then use his own Earth and Stone Dragon technique to attack him. Even if this ninjutsu did not work, there was the special Jonin of Rock Ninja, who was very fast and powerful, as the front row to attract his attention, and he launched a ninjutsu attack in the dark. Even if their opponent was a Jonin in good condition, the 2 of them could cooperate to make the other party lose his life, not to mention Dong Shilang who was in poor condition. In Gangshan Jonin's view, the opponent's defeat was only a matter of time. Maybe it wouldn't take a few rounds. After they can kill each other, they can go back to rescue their companions. If that's the case, we can only use that one move. In desperation, Dong Shilang could only use his trump card. If he still hides it at this time, he might really be defeated here. What else is there remove? While the 2 earth and stone dragons are still some distance away from him, Dong Shilang dare not delay any longer and directly make a seal to release a ninjutsu he prepared in advance. Then he put away his ninja sword and began to make seals with both hands. Although he can make seals with one hand now, it is limited to some sea level and relatively simple ninjutsu below sea level. Like the ninjutsu he is about to perform, he can't do it with one hand now. Shen Maochu, as the seals in his hands are completed, bursts of noisy sounds like thousands of birds chirping at the same time came from Dong Shilang's wrist. At the same time, it was also heard by the special Jonin on the opposite side and the Gangshan Jonin hiding underground. Lightning release. Chidori dragging the high-density chakra in his hand, feeling the increase brought by the change in the nature of the lightning-attributed chakra, Dong Shilang rushed directly towards the special Jonin who was blocking him. The speed he showed was very amazing. What's going on? How could that guy still be able to perform this level of lightning release ninjutsu? The Gangshan Jonin, who was hiding underground and observing the situation on the ground through ninjutsu, was quite shocked when he saw Dong Shilang's actions, because according to normal reason, the opponent had performed 3 high-level ninjutsu in succession, and at this time he should not have much physical strength to continue to produce chakra, otherwise, the opponent would not have been entangled with his teammates for so long. Could it be a soldier pill? But this is not reasonable. Even if the opponent ate the soldier pill, it is impossible for him to digest it so quickly. There must be a process in between. Because of the surprise and Dong Shilang's change at this time, the Gangshan Jonin is now secretly guessing the reason for Dong Shilang's change, and at the same time he can't stop muttering to himself. Could it be that the other party had taken the Binglian pill before the battle? He was puzzled and finally came to this conclusion. Otherwise, it was really a bit subversive to his cognition, you know. Even for an old senior ninja like him, it would be a bit overwhelming to produce a large amount of chakra and release 3 high-level ninjutsu in such a short time. Like the other party, the body's energy will be consumed exponentially. Not to mention the other party. Looking at the other party's figure, he only looks like 14 or 15 years old. He couldn't believe that the other party would have such a huge amount of chakra, otherwise, the sensing ninja would not have no reminder. In fact, the reason why Dong Shilang still had enough chakra to perform Chidori at this time was not because he had taken Binglian pill in advance as the other party guessed. This kind of thing, although it can play a certain role in battle, is not very practical on such a large-scale battlefield, because the use of Binglian pills will bring some not very serious consequences. Dong Shilang does not want to take it unless it is absolutely necessary. After using it, although it can help restore chakra in a short time, it tastes bad. Eating too much will also bring some invisible burdens to the young ninja's body, and will have a certain impact on future growth and development. Although it is not obvious, that's fine. The key is that after eating this kind of thing, although it can have an effect in a short time, the sequelae after the effect of the drug wears off make Dong Shilang not take it easily. The soldier pill helps the ninja to extract the energy in the body cells more deeply, but this energy is not created out of thin air. After the effect of the drug wears off, the ninja will have a period of weakness. During this period of weakness, the ninja is not completely unable to continue to produce chakra, but both the efficiency and the price paid are several times the original. This is not very good, especially in such a long-term melee battlefield. However, although Dong Shilang is not taking the soldier pill now, if the situation is urgent, he will still use this thing that he thinks is not very practical without hesitation. It's just that he can't use it at this time, because he has found a method that is more suitable for him. That is the Sage Mode. Since the future prince can prepare shadow clones to absorb Senjutsu chakra in advance during the battle, why can't he? It's just that Naruto was unable to complete the two-life technique with Fukasakushima and the two frogs because of the interference of the nine tails, and Tawashiru's preparation for his Senjutsu took too long, and he didn't have any summoned beasts like frogs or snakes to help him absorb and neutralize natural energy. However, both of them can enter the Sage Mode through the Shadow Clone, the magical ninjutsu developed by the second generation to target the Sharingan. This also makes Tawashiru's Sage Mode, which originally had no practical value, finally come in handy. It is not only a source of energy, but also used to activate himself. It can also bring him a lot of help in battle. For example, Now, once it is used, it will save him from this dangerous situation. Of course, the necessary cover-up is still to be done. He doesn't have any sage lines on his face now. No ninjutsu is needed, just some simple makeup techniques. No difficulty posting 30 chapters in 3 days. It's not too much to ask for a monthly ticket recommendation. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.